Josh, thanks for coming on. Appreciate you taking the time to have a conversation with me. Would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself before we get started?
Yeah, blessed to be here. I'm a biology teacher by day, and by night, I like to study, prove all things, investigate the evidence, and just a very fortunate person. I've had a lot of miracles happen in my life, and have been extremely blessed that the stuff that I've been sharing has been reaching people and making a difference in their lives. Mhm.
Cool. So the topic today was evidence for flat Earth and biblical cosmology. Could you tell me your position on that?
I believe what we can prove and what's provable. And so if you can prove it and replicate those results over and over again, that's what you need to start shifting your belief system towards. I used to be more of a believe all things, because when you become a teacher, it's like, how much can I learn? How much can I teach? And we never really get in that mindset of, let me prove what I'm actually teaching. I mean, I'm standing there in front of the classroom teaching all these things with animations, especially like on the beyond microscopic level. When you're looking at DNA and all these things, we teach it like we know 100% fact. This is how everything operates with life. But when you get beyond microscopic things like DNA, you have to have it animated. And when you zoom way out, a lot of the things we believed in had to be animated because we can't go that far. So proving all things is a big deal, and you just have to be humble. When you get your ego in the way or you get proud, you overlook things or you get stuck on certain things. You really kind of have to back up and humble yourself and look at the evidence again. And so that's sort of my new belief system, is really just prove all things and stick to what you can prove.
Cool. So I'm a big advocate of science. I definitely believe
Yeah.
in DNA, evolution, old Earth, all that kind of things. What about
Yeah.
those do you think we cannot prove?
Well, there's a lot of cool evidence that I never was exposed to as a kid. We just hear the same things over and over, millions of years, and all this stuff can happen. And and I believed a lot of it up even until recently, the age of the Earth, um, until about 7 years ago. I had these different theories, and like, we have all this evidence with the dinosaurs, and so that right there is my proof that it's millions of years old. And I would look at Genesis and go, well, it says in the beginning the earth was without form. That means there was life forms here before. So I had to make all these excuses. Um, but somewhere along the way in my investigation, I came across the work of this guy named Mark Armitage. And this guy was dissolving these bone specimens of dinosaurs that were allegedly millions of years old. And he was finding soft tissues, nerve cells, and all these different things that wouldn't be there if they were millions of years old. And so he started doing cross sections of these bones, and he was finding these iron deposits that would be indicative of blood clotting in the bones. And that's something that would happen if these organisms would have drowned. And so I think that's pretty good evidence that these things are younger than we're being told. And the more you dig into that subject, the weirder it gets, trying to find complete specimens of these things. And then you get like a mad scientist at your marker board, which is what I did. And you just map out the timeline that they give you using their numbers and everything to get from that mass extinction that we had to the billions of species we have now, and just plug in the numbers and see if you can get to there. And if you can, how much change would we have over time? And it is mind blowing. We would be studying evolution with time lapse photography based on the billions of species that we have. I mean, it's quite astounding looking at how far we would have had to come to get where we are. And then to look at, I mean, just the very beginning, that very first cell, because every single cell in your body has billions of phospholipids in that cell membrane. Every cell has a cell membrane. And so for that first cell to form, you would have to have those phospholipids. The thing is, the phospholipids are made in the cell by the cell. And so for them to be floating there in nature, over time, you add millions of years, everything breaks down if it's alive. So it's going to break down sooner. And so for those phospholipids to just be there in the first place is impossible. and then for them to find genetic code that's going to go on and help them replicate, and then somehow become a life form, and then somehow become different types of life forms that produce the oxygen, the products, the glucose and everything that the heterotrophic organisms need to live. It just starts becoming something that falls apart. And so it took me a lot of research to really start breaking it down and looking at it. And I think a lot of times we want to make evolution a creator, and but the more that I look at the intelligence of design, it's beyond miraculous. I mean, for example, right now, if you were to go donate blood, your body would be short of that blood supply that it once had, and it would need it. But your blood cells don't have a nucleus so that they can just divide like your regular cells, like your skin cells do. So you need new blood, and that blood comes from your bone marrow, which is weird. You wouldn't look at a skeleton and think this is where your blood comes from. It's going to come from your skeleton. This just looks like a structure that provides support, but that's where it comes from. Yet somehow, when you were in development, you were the size of an apple seed at like 5.5 weeks along in development. You had a heartbeat, you had a pulse that was detectable, and you didn't even have a skeleton yet. Yet you still had a pulse when you were the size of something. I mean, I'm talking apple seed size, like tiny. So I mean, and that's the thing about biology that I love is it's good to have theories and say, this is what I think happened, but to say that it just lightning striking water or whatever the event was caused something as complex as what we have today and all of the symbiotic relationships we have, it really would take something magical along the way, magical, miracle, whatever you want to call it, something, a guiding force. Because right now, inside every one of your cells, DNA is being replicated at such a rate. I mean, it's miraculous. In the animations, you can see it happening, and all these things are labeled, all these different parts, but they're moving parts. The replosome is over there. It's like you have all this stuff. It just looks like you're looking inside a printer, and everything's just kind of floating to where it needs to go. And they never talk about that force, what's guiding these things to go exactly where they need to go. Things are organized. We're extremely organized machines, all the way down to the levels that we can't even see. Like we don't even have a picture of the double helix, a clear photo of that exists. We have animations of it, but it's just that complex. So to me, aside from the miracles that have happened in my life, just studying the timelines and the complexity of life, the irreducible complexity, it's impossible for me to go back to any type of evolution as a creator mindset, because evolution is change over time, and we can manipulate life and see changes over time. But to the degree that we've been taught, it's something that I've ruled out as possible for what I could believe.
Okay, and so why do you think that's less plausible than, say, a designer? Because it seems like designer would have infinitely more complexity and be less plausible. And what exactly do you count as evidence? Because you said we have to prove the things we believe, which I would agree with. But what exactly do you count as evidence?
Well, it's for an example, like Muhammad Ali gave this example. He said I think he had a glass of water, and he's holding it out in front of his crowd, and he says, what if I told you, I'm going to butcher what he said because I can't remember exactly. It's been years since I watched it. But that this glass of water, or let's say this metal cup here, it's got two ingredients, metal, and then there was whatever they made the paint with. It could be several ingredients. But what if I told you I didn't go to the store and buy this? I just, through time and natural processes in nature and heat and all the wind and all these things formed and made this cup right here, this container. And people in the crowd was looking at, Muhammad Ali going, man, I think you were crazy. That glass is shaped perfectly. It's got water in it, all these things, and he, the moral was, how much more complex than that glass of water are we? And so when you look at things that have a designer, like a computer that we're using, it has code. It is programmed to do certain things. We have code. We are programmed to do certain things. Animals in nature, a silkworm, when it's producing that silk out of its mouth and it starts spinning a cocoon, imagine if all of a sudden we had silk coming out of our mouths. What would we do? We would freak out. We'd be like, get this stuff out of my mouth. But these things have a code, a program. They're programmed to know, wrap myself in a cocoon and eventually I'm going to become a butterfly. Similar to, let's talk about things with reproduction. Your sperm cells, you're making.
Well, just to clarify, my question was, is what do you count as evidence? You're just giving a bunch of examples of phenomena.
As evidence of intelligent design?
No, evidence of anything. What is the criteria that you say this is what is required for something to be evidence of any hypothesis?
Evidence.
Because you're just
giving examples evidence of intelligent design.
No, just anything that is evidence. So right now you're just giving examples of phenomenon. So like if I say the
evidence of intelligent design, you mean? So evidence of, are you asking me to give you evidence of evolution, evidence of intelligent design?
The definition of evidence, like what is the definition of something that is evidence? What is required for it to be evidence?
I see what you're saying. Sorry. Just anything that you can repeat and prove and see. Not that we can create life. So we can't create life, even if we have the ingredients to do so. We can alter it. And so, and when you look at what you can do, that's the thing right there. That's why it would require some sort of miracle. Even giving all the ingredients of life, human beings can't make it. But as far as actual evidence itself, it's usually something you can replicate. But there's things on larger scales that we can't. And that's why the flat Earth, geocentric, biblical Earth model, globe Earth model is such an interesting debate, because nobody in the debate can actually measure these distances. We can see these things, make assumptions. We can figure a lot of things out. But we have a lot of stuff we're dealing with, but the evidence is things that you can prove time and time again.
Sure. So have you ever seen any human or any intelligence ever design life?
Ever design life?
Yep.
I've never seen any human or any scientist or ever heard of them.
Any consciousness, has any conscious being ever in history ever designed a living thing?
No.
Okay, so thinking that a designer designed life is not repeatable, right?
Well, if intelligent beings can't do it, and a nothingness couldn't do it. That's
what? Well, that doesn't follow.
No.
Well, so like if I said I can't jump a fence, does that mean no one can jump a fence?
No.
Right. So like simply saying that if we can't do it, therefore something else must be able to do it. That's not true. Like it's an argument from ignorance saying that X can't do it, therefore Y.
Well, if we can't do it, then nothing at all could do it, is what you're saying.
No. So to say that X can't do it, therefore Y, and Y being anything you want to list is just, it's an argument from ignorance. You can't say because this thing can't do it, that's evidence of this other thing. That doesn't follow. To have evidence of the other thing, you would need to literally just have evidence of the other thing, which would be independent of what the first thing could or couldn't do. That's relevant.
So if people could create life, then that would be more likely to you. That would mean life is less complex. If we could create it, if we could create life, that means it's not as complex. We got it figured out. Then there's more likely to be a creator.
No, but you would have more of an inductive basis. So like if you want to say that your conclusion is that life was designed by intelligent beings, well then first you would need examples of something repeatable that humans do to design life.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So like the fact that we can design things, like I was saying, with a code, like a computer programmer can program a computer. Someone who makes video games can put in the code and do all the things so that it does what it's designed to do. So we have lots of times I can paint, a beautiful picture of something, because in us, we're made in his image. We like to create things. We get excited when you're creating music, when you're playing your guitar, you get this really good feeling like this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I am creating something. And we always have that desire in us to create something. And that's us mimicking our creator, because that's how we were made. I mean, we get excitement out of that. And so it does show us that we can make things that are complex. We're always like touch screens and all these different technological things we're making. It shows us that we can create stuff. The humbling thing is that it's humbling to me to think that with all the time that we've had and all the technology we have, we can't make life. I mean, to me, that's powerful.
But the question is, again, how do you get from we design complex things to all complex things must be designed from mind, because that doesn't follow at all. Like all complex things must be designed by a mind. So that seems like your argument is that we design complex things. Here's a complex thing that we don't know its origin of, therefore it must be a mind. That seems to be the argument.
Just that intelligently designed things most likely have an intelligent designer.
Well, the question is why do you think it's intelligently designed? That's begging the question. It's like, if you see a complex thing, simply the fact that it's complex doesn't tell us whether or not it's designed.
Because they defy all laws of physics and everything you can give them, like saying the nucleus of the cell is the brain of the cell. I've said that every year for the past, I don't know, 15 years. But when you take the special dyes and you light it up under a microscope where you can see the microtubules in action, these things are working independently without a brain, scooping up the chromosomes, attaching to the chromosomes like you're like mating socks blindfolded and matching them up perfectly, splitting them up. Okay. There's no eyes, there's no brain, there's nothing telling them, all right, now you've got everything lined up perfectly.
Just clarify, it's physically determined. So the physical parts are like Lego pieces and they attach to other Lego pieces that are the same size and shape. That's all that's going on.
So it's not like it's like two little Spider-Man characters in there with no brains, no eyeballs, blindfold, reaching in, group, and it looks like two hands is the only way I can describe it.
They're magnets. They're just magnets. That's all it is. There's just a bunch of magnets.
Okay, so put magnets in with other magnets and having them sort the magnets, group them up, and then even though they're attracted to each other, all of a sudden go, all right, we're good, pull each other apart. I mean,
no, all of the going together and going apart, that's all controlled by the magnets. It's all just determined by the physical processes. There's nothing special about that. Nothing violates physics there. That's all just determined like dominoes falling. There's nothing about that. That is
so
not
what
just
force
physics.
is guiding each individual string to the right chromosome, exactly pinpoint accuracy where it needs to go. And then
there's no pinpoint accuracy. It's like Lego pieces have certain pieces that fit in with other pieces and they don't fit in with the wrong piece. And so the way that they bond to the ones that they can fit in with, and the ones they can't fit in with, they don't bond, or they make a
all
failed
the microtubules are the same size.
No, like magnets are the same size, but they don't have the same polarity. So the fact that the size doesn't make a difference. They can only bond in certain ways. They can't bond in infinitely many ways.
These are microtubules, though. They're not essentially magnets.
No, they're essentially magnets. So they're physically determined to be able to do some things and not other things. They can't just go to bond to anything in the cell, because not everything in the cell is the same size or shape or polarity or whatever. So the physical processes in the cell are all 100% determined. We can prove that. This is stuff we can prove. We can just show if we just take any one part of the cell, put it into a different system, and show different alternative things that it can bond with. We can show physically that it's not possible for it to bond with this thing, or if it does bond with this thing, it'll do nothing because there's no protein or whatever to copy it. And so we can show that it's all just determined like crystals are. There's nothing special about that. Nothing that violates physics there.
So cells are magnet. The microtubules are just magnets, and the chromosomes are magnetic. But they're only
magnets are an analogy. Magnets are an analogy.
Okay.
So they're physically determined. The physical shape of all of the different biological systems in the cell are physically determined to be able to only match with certain things and not other things. It's not like they could just arbitrarily go to any point and be like, it works. Like, no, it's physically determined. It can only work if it goes in this one place, which is the only place it can go. And that's all that's going on there. So it's not like the other chemicals could just move to the place of an alternative chemical and still work. Like, no, the chemicals are physically shaped. Like the protein folding, they folded into particular shapes. If they aren't of the correct folding shape, they will literally not be able to fit into the slots of the other things.
Yeah. And so these microtubules, before they come out, how do they know when to start coming out and unwinding and attaching? Like it's like they're waiting for things to get just right. If they come out too early, the DNA hasn't replicated enough, it's going to go haywire. It's like they're waiting on this complex job. Like it's things that like when I watch the animations, I know there's no way I could sit and sort these things out blindfolded.
What's physically determined? Like, how does a wave know when to recede? Well, it's because the moon is literally pulling it. So when those microtubules, when they change position, it's because something is moving it. It's physically being pushed.
By what?
Other parts of the cell. Other chemicals in the cell will cause changes in the cell, cause different parts of the cell to move. That's it. There's nothing about it. There's no decisions being made. There's no thought processes. It's all just physically determined by other physical processes in the cell, and that's it. It's all just dominoes, nothing but dominoes.
Okay. So even the replosome that's doing all the things that it's doing, if you could like pull up an animation of this thing is it's intense. Like it's like you're watching an action movie. These things going on in real time. It's there. And when they show you the animations with the most sophisticated animations they have, everything's just floating in like it's just swimming right to where it needs to go. They don't have fins. They don't have eyes. Everything just goes to the exact right place it needs to go. Everything's leaving the cell, either coming into the cell. You got DNA, RNA. You know, it's extremely complex, and that's just in one cell.
Right, but it's like, how does air know to go to your lungs? It's because
Oh.
your lungs expand and pull the air into it. So that's all that's going on. There's nothing special there. The animations are specifically designed to just show you the particular process they're meant to outline. If they were actually accurate, they just show a whole bunch of billions of these things floating around and hitting different locations. And you wouldn't be able to see anything because you'd be covered by a whole bunch of different stuff in the way. And so they get rid of all the extra stuff and only show like one bond, because that's the part that he's trying to explain to you. If it was just accurate, it'd be like water, just be like all the different particles would be like water just mashed together everywhere, hitting against everything. And then the ones that actually fit together would bond, and the ones that don't wouldn't, and that's all it would be. So it's just like, why does water fill a gap in the sand? Well, because it's water. That's why.
Well, it's, and even beyond, when you look at parts of the cell, like the flagellum, the more they study it, the more they find out it has like 40 mechanized parts. Like this thing is like a motor, and without one part, it's not going to work. You take out one little part.
That's not correct. So just to clarify, the flagellum has been, like, the entire evolutionary strata of the flagellum has been shown. This was actually brought up in the Kitzmiller versus Drover trial, and they brought Michael Behe, who I had on my channel a few months ago. So they brought him up. They showed all the evidence. Everybody in the court was like, yeah, nope, evolution got this one. Evolution had solved this one. It's completely solved. You can't actually simplify it. There are literally 6 other simpler versions of the flagellum that have less parts that still function. And like, one of the easiest ways to understand this is that there are other functions that it could have. Even if it didn't function as a flagellum motor, it can still do other things. Like the exact same flagellum motor is used as an injector for a virus, where it breaks the cell wall, because instead of doing like a little spinny thing, it's just pointed straight and it's a solid object, and it uses an injection site. And so even though it has less parts, it still functions, just not as a motor. It does something else. So none of that is really a problem, but I'm still not seeing how this is evidence against evolution or for design. All you seem to be saying is that you can't understand, or it doesn't seem to you that evolution is powerful enough to design this really complicated thing, therefore it must not have been done by evolution. But that's not an argument. That's not evidence.
No, I'm not saying that's not the argument. The argument is you can't have a cell come into existence without the essential parts, and those parts are only made in the cell.
Well, so that's a modern cell. Like, you can't have a BMW without a BMW engine, because other engines don't fit. Like, so, but you don't need a BMW to be the first car. You have a Model T to be the first car. So the first cells weren't made in the exact same way our cells were. You don't have the same processes or the same parts. Like, we know cell walls can form with RNA on clay. Are they the same kind of cell walls we have today? Not at all, not even close. Ours today are billions of years of evolution, much more advanced. But to have a cell wall, to have a first organism cell, you don't need all the things that we have today. The things we have today are just one way to produce the necessary parts to create cells. It's not the only way to create cells.
So how did those phospholipids to make the cell, where did they come from?
You don't need them.
You don't need them? So you don't need a cell membrane to have a cell?
You can't have a cell membrane. You don't need a phospholipid to have a cell membrane.
So what else could they be made out of?
All kinds of stuff. Like, all you need is a barrier in order to prevent transmission between the two fluids on the internal and the external. It doesn't need to be the kind that we have today. So, like, you're confusing. Here's
so where
the
does that
BMW
barrier
engine
come from? And that barrier would have to then make another barrier by producing the parts needed to make another cell.
Well, that's
it would
why
have to have something in it that helps it make the parts it needs to reproduce, to make another one.
Well, that's why I mentioned the
reproducing
RNA.
asexually.
RNA on clay is exactly that. RNA on clay. If you just Google it, that study is one showing that corpuscles on cell membranes can form through RNA on clay. They're not the same kind we have today. They are the same kind of membrane. There is a membrane for
So
a cell.
where's the proof that those cells existed? Because
Who
they
cares?
don't. What's that?
Why would that matter? Like all that matters is
It would
is
matter
there
because you would have to have proof that they existed. If you're saying there's a cell that had some weird barrier, there would have to be thousands of years of evolution to get for it to become one that all of a sudden now has cell membranes and now
what?
makes plant cells, now makes chlorophyll, now makes chloroplast,
Sure.
now makes all the different things that we have that we would need. Because if it was a heterotroph, it would need to have an autotroph in that same environment eventually, or it's going to run out. It's not going to have food. So if you are a creature and you come into existence at random and you're on a rock in a vacuum with water, there's no atmosphere yet. And so you're that first creature. You're going to need to eat something. You're going to need oxygen. Okay. If you don't need oxygen, you need some sort of food source. You're going to need something
But
to sustain yourself.
all of the original life forms were autotrophs. Like none of them ate other
But
creatures
what
first.
where did they get their products that they needed? Because we make the products for plants.
What plants? The sun, the air, and water is where plants get their nutrients.
Yeah, but it's not just air; it's carbon. They need carbon dioxide. We make that.
We do not make that. We make a very small percentage of that. Most of that is already in the atmosphere. So we don't. That was already there. It was mostly there. More of it was there previously. But so like all of this, the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, like you've heard of greenhouse gases, those things, like the amount we contribute is like 0 point something percent. 99 something percent is already there. Has nothing to do with humans.
How did it get there?
How did the carbon atoms get there?
Yeah, on a rock, in a vacuum, molten, and then the water appeared. How did the water get there on this? And there was an explosion, and so I'm guessing there was an explosion. Explosions are hot. You have a rock in a vacuum going hundreds of times faster than a bullet, and now it's covered with water. Like it's hard for me to backtrack and get to that point to where that explosion caused that.
Which explosion are we talking about? We're talking the Big Bang explosion?
I'm assuming Big Bang. I don't know. I never did ask you what you believe on that, but I'm assuming.
Well, yeah, I definitely believe in Big Bang, but particularly how did carbon dioxide get into the atmosphere? That comes from supernovas, from stars exploding. So there's two different explosions there. There's particles, hydrogen, oxygen, helium, carbon, blah, blah, blah. They have mass. Mass attracts other things with mass, and so they come together and bond. And then if there's enough of them, they have a large enough mass to pull in a whole bunch more. And this grows exponentially until you have hundreds of trillions of atoms all colliding together, and then some bond with others. So like carbon atoms can bind with hydrogen atoms and not oxygen atoms, and you get carbon dioxide and CO2. And this happens a lot because carbon and oxygen are two of the 5 most common elements in the universe, and that's how you get carbon dioxide in an atmosphere. I don't know, that part I don't really understand, is too difficult. But I still want to go back to, I don't see how any of this is evidence of design. It seems like you're saying it's super complicated. I can't understand how natural processes would do it. Therefore, design. It seems to be the argument.
Nobody understands life. We can study it all. That's why we're still studying it. We know a lot of the things that happen, but we can't. If we understood it, we could just go out and make it. But if you leak out the ingredients of a cell and we try to put them back, it's not going to work. Life requires the breath of life. Once I die,
wait. That's the part that. So if I grant your first sentence that nobody understands life, then your second sentence seems to contradict that, where you said the breath of life needs to go into things to make them alive or something along those lines. I don't remember exactly what you said, but it seems like you're saying nobody understands it. But I understand it. That was contradiction. So I obviously think
I don't understand the breath of life. I just know it works. And I know once I die, I can't, even though I have all the same parts, the heart, lungs, everything, you can't undo that. I mean, it's,
sure. But my point here is that, say there's something we don't understand. Like, I don't think either of us understand how the Large Hadron Collider works. So we go to the Large Hadron Collider, we have no idea how it works.
Yeah.
And you say, well, T-Jump, you have no idea how it works, therefore my model is right. Well, no, you don't understand it either. Just because you have a model and I admit that I don't understand it doesn't mean that's evidence of your model. So what we need here is not simply saying that evolution can't understand it, therefore I'm right, because that doesn't work.
That's not that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying from what I believe and from what I've worked through for years with evolution, if it's 100% true, let's just say it's fact. There would be never a need for fraud. I wouldn't have to go and get the Piltdown man. We would be on a mountains of bones of transitional kinds. I mean, just transitional everywhere. Everywhere you would step, you'd be walking on bones to
Well,
get
every
to where
fossil
we
is a
have.
transitional fossil, but I'm not following. Even if you criticize evolution, you can criticize evolution all day. That's none of that will ever be evidence of design.
No, I'm not saying it's evidence for creation. I'm saying that if evolution were true, we wouldn't need to fake any of the evidence. We wouldn't need animations of things that happened. We wouldn't just be like, oh, we finally found the missing link. Oh, that's a hoax. Here's another one. Oh, nope, that one didn't work out. Like every time I have coworkers that have sent me stuff. Like they gave me a book and they're like, here, this is what you need to read this specific book right here. And here's the missing link right here. It's the Ostega, this one thing they found. And then you pull up pictures of it and it's all the same specimen in the same exact motion, but they've made it look like they have 10 or 20 of them. And it's like they're always just changing the evidence everywhere I look. Ernst Haeckel, I mean, this guy, his embryo drawings and all the stuff that's still in textbooks
even
today.
if there are dishonest people, that doesn't prove that the theory is wrong.
No,
your argument seems to be like
you wouldn't need them. Those guys would not.
We don't need them. We don't. None of those are used. None of those are used.
They're still in
science.
Textbooks today.
Textbooks are not science. Textbooks are not academic papers. Textbooks
I know, but
are shorthands to teach high school kids because it's cheap. That's it.
Yeah.
So none of those things you mentioned are actually used in science. Nobody uses those.
We use them to teach our children. This is what
that doesn't matter. We don't care. We teach kids a lot of stupid things. None of that is evidence against science. So no. So you're correct that we don't need those things because nobody in science uses those things. Like I understand that they aren't some of the early things people did several hundred years ago aren't scientifically accurate, and they're still used in textbooks because it's cheaper. But you're right; those aren't used for science. We don't need those for science. And every fossil is a transitional fossil, so we do have lots of transitional fossils.
When we're influencing our future scientists, it's wrong to go, here's this evidence by this guy in 1901 who was a Nazi, that was racist, and he had this theory. They don't tell us all the, the backstory of this guy, but they show us these embryo drawings, the ones that I saw like in 5th grade, 6th grade, and you see that. And our kids see that and they go, what does this prove? And on the test, everything's common ancestor. What does this prove? And it's like we're using evidence based on drawings from the 1900s, and they don't use the real things for a reason. And to me, that's
because it's cheaper. That's the only answer. So again, critiquing evolution based off of. Wait, one second. I just want to clarify. So criticizing academic scientific evolution because of what's taught in high schools is a complete non sequitur. Doesn't matter what's taught in high schools. Completely irrelevant to science. That's like saying
I'm saying it hinders science is all I'm saying.
Hinders science. Well, it definitely doesn't.
When you're showing future scientists or possible scientists false evidence, it stunts their growth. They can't investigate the right way because they're seeing false evidence.
No, like that's what a diagram is. A diagram is something, a hand-drawn thing that is literally not an accurate representation of what's actually there, but it's easy to understand. So the point of the diagrams is to make something easy to understand. It doesn't matter if they're literally true. High school literally doesn't matter to science. So bringing up what's taught in high schools as if that is a criticism of evolution, scientific academic evolution, is completely irrelevant. It's like if I said, what's the problem why we know the Bible is false is because in high school people use hand drawing pictures of the Bible and Noah's Ark to show the kids all the pretty pictures of the people there. Like clearly no one thinks that's an accurate representation of what the Bible is literally saying.
Well, I know, but if I said
that's the same thing in science, saying that true. No one is saying that the stuff in high school is proof that evolution is true. The stuff in high school are diagrams. That's it.
Yeah, but
no one is going to high school textbooks and being like, I'm going to publish this in an academic paper of evolution because this is great evidence of evolution. No one is saying that. High school textbooks are just a simple way to teach kids the facts, and that's it. It's the shorthand. It's cheap. It's inexpensive. It's not meant to be true. It literally doesn't matter to anything.
And I'm fine with teaching facts, but you're saying facts. I'm saying drawings that aren't facts, but the words are used as, what does this fact prove? What does this illustration prove?
Which is correct. That is all 100% correct and doesn't in any way invalidate evolution. Like the diagrams.
I'm not saying it invalidates evolution. I'm just saying it's false evidence.
It's diagrams. Nothing in high school is used in academic philosophy or academic evolution or academic biology. It's a completely irrelevant. No one cares. This does nothing. Does
That's
nothing
where
to
the
help any
beliefs
point.
and the people that go on to college and
I
start doing
don't.
things, and that's
That's
what
when they actually
their
start
mind
getting
still sees
exposed to
that.
real evidence. When they go to college, they're exposed to real academic science. The fact that they use pictures in high school has literally nothing to do with anything. So
They still
I
use
don't
the
know why.
pictures
I
in
don't know
college.
why you bring this up. It's completely irrelevant. No, they don't. The college textbooks are written by the college professors using the actual college pictures of actual embryos. They've replaced them. The high school ones use them because they don't have enough funding to buy new textbooks. The college ones have tons of funding. They use new ones. They use
We've
actual
got
ones
new
and make the kids do
textbooks, and
themselves.
they're expensive.
This is not relevant. I don't know why you keep talking about this. It does not help your point. You're just proving my point that I'm right. Like, you have to bring up actual criticisms of evolution, not say some people in high school use wrong pictures. I don't care.
That wasn't my criticism of evolution. That is I'm just saying that's bad science. It's bad to show that to people and have them go
No, it's
on and
not. What do you have something
to
else?
show.
Some other relevant point to the conversation?
So okay, so I don't understand why that's such a big deal to say that that's not good to do that to minds that are
Using shorthand pictures to explain things to kids, which is correct, is totally fine. The pictures don't have to be accurate. It's what a diagram is called. Diagrams are not meant to be perfectly accurate. It doesn't matter. No one cares. If they actually want to get into science, they'll look at the literal pictures and have to do the work. The pictures in high school don't have to be perfectly accurate.
But that's the problem. They leave school. They don't ever go on and try to prove that those pictures were fraudulent. I was never told. It's never in the news when these hoaxes come out.
The pictures are not fraudulent. They're diagrams. They're generalizations. That's what a diagram means. They are correct. They're 100% correct. They're 100% correct about the conclusions. And when you start to research the things, you'll be exposed to more accurate data, which more accurately proves the data. The diagram doesn't matter. It literally is irrelevant. It's a picture used to explain an idea, like a picture book. That's it.
Like the diagram supports your theory if you make
the diagram is
fraudulent.
nothing. The diagram is a picture meant to express an idea. If you want to learn more about the idea at an academic level, they're not going to give you the picture. They're going to give you the actual work in the field.
Exactly.
So when people do actually go into those fields in college, which is what they do, they are not basing it off of that picture. They are basing it off of the real evidence, the novel testable predictions, which can be confirmed and repeated and demonstrated in a lab, which prove evolution is true, has nothing to do with the picture. The picture is irrelevant to everybody past high school. No one cares. It's just a picture.
Okay.
So the question is why do you think, again, I'm still trying to figure out how you get evidence that evolution is wrong. Simply saying you can't understand it isn't evidence it's wrong. So, like, my very first question is, what do you accept as evidence? My answer to that question is novel testable predictions. So if you can say, I have a hypothesis that whatever X is true, if X is true, here is something I can predict we will find in the future that we don't know yet. And if you get it right, do some experiments to confirm that prediction, you now have evidence. And the more you get that right, the more evidence you have. And the only one that can do that is evolution. Intelligent design does not ever do that. Complete failure, 100%.
So you're saying that you yourself are not extremely complex and intelligently designed. There's no intelligent design.
I am extremely complex. I'm not intelligently designed. But the reason we have evidence for that is because the evolution makes the predictions that can be confirmed, like ERVs in DNA, like patterns in ancestry, like patterns in vestigial limbs, like patterns in fossil records and geology that are all correct, 100%, every single one of them, right, tens of thousands. Are there some frauds? Sure. Does that matter? No. This is completely irrelevant. I don't care about the frauds. What I care about is, does someone have a hypothesis that can make novel predictions and get it right? Yes, and it's not intelligent design. Intelligent design can't do that, which is why it's a pseudoscience. It's considered a pseudoscience because it doesn't actually make predictions that can be confirmed. It's just post hoc reasoning of saying, this is really complex. I don't know how it doesn't make sense to me, therefore God. So what I'm asking is, from your worldview, what counts as evidence? Like in my worldview, novel predictions count as evidence. If you can predict the future and get it right before we know it, you have phenomenal evidence, which is why I think intelligent design and flat earth are pseudosciences, but I think science is perfect.
Okay. So back to provable, and this is that, and especially with the shape of the world, you said flat earth is pseudoscience. Yes, I thought that. I laughed at it my very first day in the classroom. I was holding a globe in my hand, literally, because I got thrown into a 6th grade earth science job right away. And I mean, I believed it. I had miracles happen in my life when I believed in that. I've had I've seen things that made me believe that there's a creator before I really, or experienced things that made me know there's a creator before I could really start going into this stuff and looking into it. I would have never looked into the shape of the earth, not being a globe, had it not been for some powerful miracles that happened that humbled me enough to go, what else am I missing? You know, because here I am going outside, looking up at the sky and just knowing something's off. Something is off. How have I had 3 miracles happen and have a creator listening to somebody like me who is not worthy? But of course, when I reached out to him and he did answer the times that he did, that's what got me questioning the truth about where we live, the truth about evolution, creation, and all of that. And that's where my fixation on intelligent design was the very first one that I started looking at, was evolution. And like I said, you could use the timeline they give you. You just try to map it out on the board. That's what I was doing. And there's just, for everything to work to get to where we are now, it's not possible with the timeline they give us. And I feel like you could add trillions of years and it's still not possible.
Well, again, just to clarify, my question was what is the definition of evidence? So,
so you just want me to...
Yeah, from your perspective. So, my perspective, the definition of evidence is successful, novel, testable predictions.
Yeah.
That is evidence. If you can do that, you have evidence. So,
Yeah,
based on my definition of evidence, creationism and flat earth 100% fail because they don't have any. Science 100% wins because they do. And what you seem to be doing is taking your interpretation of the science, trying to plot it out, and you find intuitive contradictions. Now, I don't care about that at all. I think that's not evidence. That's just you taking something that seems your interpretation of the data and seeing your interpretation doesn't make sense. But to me, that's irrelevant. Like, so even if I took my interpretation and my interpretation didn't make sense to me whatsoever, I couldn't make sense of it. If the scientists could still make novel, testable predictions and predict things and get it right, they would still have all of the evidence, even if it makes no sense to me whatsoever. If they were still able to make successful predictions, they still have the evidence. Doesn't matter how incomprehensible it is to me. They still have evidence. And so my question for you is, what is your definition of evidence? What qualifies as evidence in your worldview?
Yeah, it's a lot like, if I can live by it every day, if I could go out and, let's say, jump in an airplane and I can fly somewhere, if I'm looking for evidence that it's curved, if I'm going to flight school, I'm going to ask my instructor, how can I account for this curvature? Because it has to be there. If I don't account for it, life or death, I'm going to end up in space. And so evidence is something I can prove time and time again. If I can assume, like the NASA documents say, we can assume it's flat and not rotating. If I can assume that, and then I go out and I go, well, heck, if I can assume it, what if I can prove it? What if I could get, every time I shoot a line of sight signal across the surface of water, it reaches its target every time? You know, across the Atlantic, Guglielmo Marconi, done. He did it. Okay, that was really far. And then since then, they've gone even further. Since then, we have footage of the firmament. Okay, now I've actually seen it. There's all these things that you can just set and keep trying to do, improving laser tests over the surface of water, learning about the Elias effect that happens, different things that shift you away from what you thought was evidence. Constantly looking at countless hours of the stuff that we thought was 100% authentic evidence, and examining it further, getting a fisheye lens, experimenting with a curved line versus a straight line, doing all these things, stacking up evidence, things that you can just continually keep doing over and over and over, repeating, getting the same results around the world, and getting scientists that are trustworthy, that aren't getting money to sit there and do the same things, repeat it over and over, and understanding that you're going to have questions you can't answer, but you keep working together to prove what you believe, not just what you believe with just this extreme bias is true. Because there was a time where I thought, you know what, even though the Holy Spirit's telling me this is true, I'm going to keep investigating until I can prove it. And because we're supposed to, that's what we're told to do, to prove all things. So if you can prove it, then to me, that's evidence. It's a lot like what you're saying. If it's going to yield the same results. It's going to yield over and over the same exact results, or at least most of the time. Sometimes there can be conditions that change the results. It just depends. Especially.
Well, we got some super chats. Thank you for the super chat, Jason. Appreciate it. It says Josh is patient. It's partially a compliment, partially not a compliment. Also, there's a super chat from Joey Cricky. Thank you for the super chat, Joey. Just joined T-Jump is amazing. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. So get those out of the way. So my question was, what is your definition of evidence? And you said things that we can repeatedly prove, do repeatedly, something along those lines. And like I can see the sun come up every day and I can make a prediction the sun will come up or something. That's something we can repeatedly prove, but it doesn't tell us anything new. So I think that your definition of evidence is missing something important, which is the ability to distinguish new things that we haven't seen yet. What is something new? So something that's not repeatable because we haven't seen it yet. How would you indicate a hypothesis? Like, because all hypotheses can explain the old data. Everything can predict something we already know. Everybody can say the sun's going to rise tomorrow, therefore the flying spaghetti monster, or therefore magical leprechauns. It's called post hoc reasoning. You predict something we already know. It's not very hard. So I think it's incredibly important to be able to predict something we don't know yet, something we haven't seen, something it's not repeatable. We don't know what it is yet. What is something we don't know yet? Predict the answer and get it right. I think that's a really key important factor that your evidence, your standard evidence is not including, which it probably should include. And if you include that piece of evidence, I've never seen that done on flat earth or intelligent design, where I see it done every day on science. And so why do you not consider that an important piece of evidence? And if you do, why do you think that the models that you support, flat earth and intelligent design, can't do that, but science can do that?
I'm not really understanding the question. I'm sorry. You said it was a really long question. You kind of, at the end, you kind of lost me there.
Yeah. So my question is, you seem to be not including this criterion of evidence, the novel testable predictions, which I think is a really important criterion.
What was that? Say it again. Sorry, you said it real fast.
Novel testable predictions, predicting something about the future we don't know yet. It's like the colloquial way to phrase it. So what I think is required for a model to have evidence, if it doesn't have this, it's just pseudoscience. If it doesn't have this, by my definition, it has to be able to predict something we don't know yet and get it right. And that's what I would need to see from things like flat earth.
So like which thing would we not know yet? What that we need to prove?
It's anything. So like, for example, evolution has done tens of thousands of these, predicted patterns of ERVs that would be shared among common ancestors at different points in DNA, got it right. It predicted that TikTok would be found in a specific geological layer in a specific location, got it right. It predicted that there'd be a double hinged jaw joint between mammals in a specific location, got it right. And there's dozens of these. There's a really great video by Jackson Wheat that gives an example of about 20 of them or something, where they were predictions made by evolution, expected by evolutionists that they didn't know. We had no evidence of this yet.
They're
right.
Yeah, they're predictions by evolutionists, scientists, whatever
Sure.
But do they have proof of macro evolution? Like, I want to see the proof. I have been looking for the proof, and no one's ever shown me here. This is the proof. I don't care what they can predict and say, hey, I think we're going to find this organism that has whatever. I've never seen proof of it without animations. Like you said, animations don't count. I've never seen proof of macro evolution.
Well, I think again, so that's confusing direct observation and indirect observation, but that's a different thing. I'm just talking about prediction right now. So let's say if I predict that we're going to find a specific fossil that is halfway between a lizard and a fish. So it can go on land. It can also go in sea. It has a fin. It has the specific spine structure of a lizard, but it's not a fish. So it's halfway between a lizard and a fish. And I predict it's going to be at this exact location, this fossil layer. This is where it's going to be found. Not anywhere else, not above, not below. I predict exactly where it's going to be found before we've ever seen it. We've never seen this thing. Now, if we look and we find it, whatever I use to make that prediction, I could say magical pixie leprechauns told me in my sleep that I would find this thing. Let's just say that we've never seen the magical pixie leprechauns, But if we found this and I got it right, which is a very specific prediction, it'd be very random if I got this right, that this exact fossil will be found at this exact location if we've never seen it before. If we do get it right, that's evidence of my position. Even if I don't see the leprechauns, even if nobody sees the leprechauns, the fact that I got this information from them and I got it right, which is something we've never seen before, that's evidence of the leprechauns. Does that part make sense?
I don't take that stance that if somebody can predict something, the thing that they believe in that doesn't have the proof needed is true because they predicted something about a fossil or whatever you're trying to predict. I feel like you said, like you have to have that evidence. I should be able to go out and find it pretty easy, but I can predict 2,000 years from now, people are still going to be people. I know that's going to happen because I can look back 4,000 years from now and people.
That wouldn't be. Just to clarify, that wouldn't be a novel prediction. So like that's like the sun rising tomorrow. Novel means new, something we don't already know yet. So if you're predicting something that's going that we already know,
people stay people.
Right. So that's not a novel prediction. Novel prediction means something we don't know.
Yeah.
So it's like if I could predict tomorrow the lottery numbers are going to be this, 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 and this, and then do it again next week and do it again next week, I must have some new knowledge, right? I must have some basis of knowing things that's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
So if I could do that consistently, if I said God was telling me, that would be good evidence of God, right? Because I could do something new that no one else could do, a novel prediction, right?
Okay. Yeah. And so people have done that in the flat earth movement. There have been people say, no one that I know, because no one that I knew ever had taken a laser, set it up 5 feet above the water and shot it 25 miles or 21 miles. It's never been done. It's impossible. It should be impossible. And so they made a prediction. They said if there's low moisture in the air, we should be able to do this on a cold day with these, conditions. And they shoot the laser at a height of 5 feet, and directly across from them, looking straight out at eye level, they see that laser on the other side of the lake. That's something they predicted. No one had ever seen that before, and it happened. And then you go and you watch PBS footage of them dropping a helicopter below the curve. I'm sure you've probably seen that footage. Have you seen that?
I think so.
It might have been, I don't know if it was PBS. It might have been part of the PBS crew. But they dropped a helicopter below the curvature. That's astounding because they had a telescope. They're at a lake. And I'm like, wow, who am I going to believe? These people over here that I've known, that I've met in real life and seen and talked to, they're good people, family people, they're not funded. Or I'm going to watch this show, and then you look at that footage and you see it, and it looks so real. It actually looks real. But then you go back and watch, and they have proof where they doctored the footage, where you see the exact same birds that flew through as this thing was going down. Those exact same 3 birds with the exact same water patterns. As soon as it goes below the curve, they come right back again. So you can see that the footage is doctored. And so you see things like that, and it's like, who am I going to believe? Am I going to believe my friends who are doing this stuff independently, or these people who are getting paid all this money, being promoted while we're being censored? They shouldn't have to censor us. We're just doing science experiments here. If we're wrong, just let this goofy, silly, dumb, new age movement, whatever you think flat earth is, let it just die out on its own, because they're not going to find evidence. But the crazy thing is they keep finding it, and it keeps being censored, just like the firmament footage that Nova put out. They took it down, historic footage, and they took it down. And so there should be no need for censorship. We should just be able to share this stuff. It's harmless. I've never seen somebody go, I believe in the flat earth, and now I'm going to go out and rob a bank. Like, it's changed lives. I've met with thousands of people around the world when I travel and stuff. I see people that have had their lives changed. They're more at peace. There's nothing dangerous about it. I mean,
so like, I mean, whether or not somebody's at peace, I don't care. I don't care if National Geographic faked footage. I don't care about National Geographic.
I wouldn't care, but that's the evidence that, like,
what? I do not use National Geographic as evidence.
Yeah.
Nobody in science uses National Geographic as evidence. National Geographic is a documentary like popular TV show. It's not evidence of science.
I know, but they shouldn't have to fake it. They could have went out and just done it.
I don't care what National Geographic does. So
I don't either, but I'm just saying they wouldn't have to fake it. they could just do it, but they have to fake it, and that's the problem.
No, scientists actually do it. Scientists have made novel predictions. So, like, to go back to your laser example, when you asked who should we believe, I think we should believe the people who can make successful predictions and get them right. And the people who can make successful predictions are the scientists. Now, you mentioned that they made a prediction about shining a laser 5 feet over the water and seeing it at eye level on the other side. I would need to know more about that, but I'm pretty sure that's a prediction we've already made in science. I don't know why we wouldn't be able to do it. Like, if light curves, like I can.
His tripod would have to be 230 feet tall for him to do that. I mean, it would be insanely tall. 21 miles.
So light can bend. Like, you can get lights from an eye level.
No, that's the cool thing. He could see the reflection of his laser on the water as well. So it was perfectly flat. The reflection of the laser on the water would have to also jump up off the water and curve around the curve.
Yeah, like that's like, I don't see the problem there. So, like, if light,
so you have the laser bending in a perfect curve with the 0.666 feet per mile squared, and then you have the laser over the water that's actually reflecting down below the laser, shooting straight up and then going back over the curvature.
So lasers, as they go out, they spread, they become wider.
Lasers do with their reflection on the water.
Right. So if the laser spreads, some of it's going to go down and hit the water, and it's going to hit the water. It's going to continue to spread. So there's going to be photons of the laser hitting the water at the entire length of the ocean. So, or whatever body of water you're going off of, which means at any point on the other side, there's going to be some of the light that hit the water, like, in front of you and hit your eye. So I don't see the problem there. So, like, because the light of the laser is going to expand as it goes out into a cone, and once the cone hits the body of water, everything in front of that cone is going to have a reflective part of the laser coming off of it. So I don't see the problem there.
It was the reflection on the water near the source of the laser, not like it was shining down like a bent tent pole. I mean, it was actually by the laser on the water. You can see the reflection of the laser. I highly recommend checking it out. It's Ben from Taboo Conspiracy. He has the 21, I think it's 21.2 miles or 21.4. I can't remember the exact numbers, but he's done similar 16 miles, 21 miles, over and over again. And sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it's kind of like trying to shine a light on the bottom of the Marianas Trench, with a flashlight. You can't always see it. It's too far. Water filters out light, and these very powerful lasers can sometimes cut through that amount of moisture in the air. That's why we have to use lasers. That's what the difficult thing about this is, the amount of water in our air. So that's why we can look at the sun when the sun's going down. I can stare directly at it at sunset, but at noon, if I do that, I'm going to be a blind man. And it's because of that water in the air.
Well, one point here is that that's not a novel prediction. That's something that in the flat earth model, we fully expect to see all of those things. Like, we totally expect to see all of that. For it to be a novel prediction, you have to predict something we don't know yet. And so, like, a novel prediction potentially would be, or this wouldn't be a novel prediction, it would just be a contradictory prediction. If we have a laser, we make it exactly parallel to the ground, and we take a boat and we go out several miles, the laser will go up and we will go down. Now, if we're on a flat earth, that shouldn't happen, because all water level is like supposed to be perfectly flat. And so we would not expect that if we're just driving out in the ocean that the laser would go up. But every time we do this anywhere in the world, we always see this 100%, every single time. And this has been done many, many times. Another one would be my friend, Mr. Sensible, has built a air balloon, a hot air balloon, lifted it up 35,000 feet ish into the air. And he shows that with two parallel bars, he built a box. So it's like a big triangular box, and he put bars on the end of the box, and it goes up into the atmosphere. And it's a perfect, I forget what the name of it is, the lens that isn't curved at all, or something. And it shows that at 35,000 feet, you can see the curvature of the Earth, and there's two bars in front of it. So if the lens was reflecting light or whatever, it would bend the bars. And since we can see the bars are perfectly straight, we know the curvature is coming from the Earth. And that's something that's only predicted on the globe Earth model. And so that's a great novel prediction of an experiment done that we potentially didn't know, that was confirmed to show that the world is in fact curved, because he just shot a camera up into the atmosphere, 30,000 feet. It popped, it fell down, grabbed the footage. The entire video
did it land near how far away did the camera land from where they launched?
No idea. You can ask him though, because literally the entire video footage is online. You can watch the entire video footage, all 5 hours of it.
Oh, I've
to
seen,
know exactly what
I've seen a
happens.
lot of high altitude footage. I mean, hours and hours and hours.
But yeah, so he literally built it. He has all the specs that you can repeat this yourself. You can go do it. You can go build this exact same balloon, put it into the air, put the little strings across the bar to show that the curvature must not be in the camera. It has to be on the Earth. And this was a phenomenal experiment.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. But if you look at, let's say I got a fisheye lens and I put a square directly in front of that fisheye lens, right? A square perfectly centered with the lens. It's going to look perfectly straight. But the objects, the horizon in the distance, I can move that camera up and down all I want. Those two straight lines in that box are not going to change because it's locked in place with the camera.
Right, it's not a
But the
fisheye lens.
horizon
It's
can
the
still change.
rectilinear lens. It's a rectilinear lens, so it can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
So he used a rectilinear lens, and again, you can use a rectilinear lens and get the same result. So it's not a fisheye lens.
No. But I'm just saying that the lines in front of that, even with a fisheye lens, won't curve if they're centered. Anytime you if you get a flat line, like the SpaceX footage, you've seen the horizon go convex, concave. You've seen it do that bendy thing where it goes both directions. And you can only do that with a perfectly flat line. If you try to do that with an existing curved lines, the outer edges, the curvature is not going to match that. You can't get the outer edges to bend perfectly in the other direction. And this is from allegedly a couple hundred miles up that we've seen that. So you can try that. Get a flat line, draw a flat line on your wall, or put a flat line on your wall, get a fisheye lens, you can make it bend, then get a curved line, do the same thing. And I did this, and I failed time and time again trying to repeat what SpaceX was doing with
SpaceX.
Yeah. I mean, I know they're probably not considered science to you, but I don't consider them really science with all the
Well, so there's multiple lines at the top and the bottom of the screen. And so if there was a fisheye lens, the ones at the top would be bent and the ones at the bottom would be bent the opposite direction, right?
Yeah. So like essentially you get a flat straight line and you get a fisheye lens and you line it up to where the line is directly in the middle of the camera's view.
No, multiple lines, all the way up, multiple lines at the top, lines at the bottom.
Well, there's only one horizon, so you would just use one line to represent the horizon.
No. He made multiple lines in front of the camera. So there's little bars. He put a box in front of the camera, and there's lines that are going like across the box here and here.
Yeah.
So you can see if the fisheye lens, you'd see these bend, but there's no bend. These are perfectly straight. And these are in front of the camera. It's a literal box that covers the camera and shows lines to prove that the camera is not fisheye lens, to prove that there's no distortion, because you would see them in the lines that are directly in front of the camera. So there's not one line for the horizon. The horizon is something that's behind these to show that the camera lens isn't causing any distortion. But this is an example of a novel prediction confirmed by science, which there are a number of.
But that's 35,000 feet?
Yep.
That's not very high. When you go in a plane, that's how high you are. When you fly, when I flew to Australia, that's how we flew from North America all the way there.
Sure.
And not one time do we have to account for any movement, any curvature. And it's like 200,000 feet an hour. I mean, it's ridiculous how many per hour, how far you would have to drop. It's more than when you land. I mean, it's a lot of curvature. If you're going 600 miles an hour, however fast they're flying, when they're reaching their top speeds, they don't have to account for it. They never do. No movement, no curvature ever.
Oh, Travis says it was 35,000 meters. He's British measurements.
Oh, is it meters? Okay.
I think so. I don't know. I don't remember. It's 35,000. I think it was 35,000 feet. I'm pretty sure it was, but I might be wrong. But either way, I understand planes go that high, but either way, you can see the curvature. So it doesn't matter. I don't think it matters.
If you get special filters in your cameras like Jay Tolan has done, you can see through a lot of the atmosphere. That's the thing. We're essentially underwater. And so making observations from that high, you can't really gauge where the real horizon is because of how thick that atmosphere is, even at that height. It's thinner and there's pressure changes, but it's not something you can see clearly unless you have special filters. He could have, if he would have said, okay, if he had the exact same filters that Jay Tolan had, he would have probably seen a lot further beyond that bendy horizon that he thought was curving. If he can see something that he shouldn't see, then the curve's not there. So it's like he would have multiple observations to back up that claim that what he's seeing is the curve of a ball A moving ball, not a stationary ball.
So they're saying it's 35 kilometers, 3,500 kilometers, whatever. It's those the meters one, not the feet one. That's fine. So 115,000 feet. Citizen 9 says, and you can clearly see the horizon. It is extremely. You can see space. It's very clearly visible, and there is no firmament. It's
just the blackness.
Yes,
the blackness of space,
fuzziness of space. But so, what do you think compares to the ability to make predictions like that are correct, that scientists do all the time, and why do you think that anything can compare with that?
Because this is things that everyday people can do. You can go out and buy a laser, go to a frozen lake. You don't have to send the balloon up. You can tell by with the ground you walk on how flat it is. And if the water doesn't curve at 21 miles, it's not going to curve at 40 miles. It's not going to curve at 100 miles. If I can take a line of sight like Guglielmo Marconi, when physicists were like, you're not going to be able to shoot a line of sight, a signal that doesn't curve across the Atlantic. And he did. And since then, we've gone further than that. And every time it's always like, it's refraction. It's just refraction. We knew that was going to happen. Like, it's always refraction. I don't care if I shoot a line of sight signal all the way around the globe, it's refraction. You know, it's like, it's always.
Why wouldn't that be refraction?
What's that?
Why wouldn't that be refraction? Like light bends. So yeah, like I don't see what the problem is there. Like if we see two experiments, one is that you can see the laser from the other beach or whatever, and the other is that when you point a laser out into the ocean and you drive a boat there, you realize laser goes up. So if you see both of these things, like both of these things can be explained by
I've seen lasers curve upward. Yeah,
curve upward.
Mm-hmm.
How could they curve upward?
I've seen it in the footage. It was like 16 miles, and the laser was curving. It was actually curving up and away. It wasn't curving like with the curve. It was actually going. You could actually see the laser light itself going upward, like curving. Like a,
okay,
I guess you'd say
well, I'm saying not curving, so no curving here. Just point a laser straight out into the ocean, and if you just drive a boat out, the laser will go up, and the boat will go down. So like if you have a big, they did the experiment on a TV show.
That's the thing. Like you would have to actually physically see the entire laser path. And these people were doing it at night, and you can see that the laser's path, like you guys say that it curves. Yes, light can bend like that, but it was curving upward. And so it would be the same type effect as that laser. Light can curve upward. So as you go further away, if it happens to be those exact same conditions, then yeah, it would seem like, oh, the laser's getting higher. Therefore, it's Earth curve. When it's
we see this everywhere. We see this in every body of water. Anywhere. You always test it. You always see this.
They didn't.
What? Well, yeah, they only did one, but this has been done.
No, they've done it. They've done it multiple times. Other people have done it too. I mean, he has people send them their laser footage around the world. I mean, you can go. They go on a frozen lake and put lights on the ice, like on the surface of the ice at 7 miles, 5 miles, 3, like different distances. Go all the way down. 8 miles away from the furthest light. Set your camera on the ice and see every different light. Like they made the lights different colors, like red, yellow, blue. And all of those lights were at the exact same height or elevation. Like people just go out and do this stuff. And it's not like frozen water just knows to not curve because it's frozen. If it was curved, it would freeze and still be curved.
Right. It is. Like you see the curve.
They don't see it. When they try to prove it, they don't see it. That's the problem.
Well, everyone I've seen done, everyone proves it. Every single experiment I've seen done, every one of the ones I've done with my friends who test this, we've all seen it every single time. There's never any doubt.
You guys have gone to. So that's the thing. I don't see those types of experiments. People doing that, going to frozen lakes, going out in these extreme environments, and proving it, and then go, okay, there's the curve. There it is. It's like when I'm watching these people do it, like Ben from Taboo Conspiracy. I'm like, I want to give you money. And he's like, I don't want money because then I'm going to have bias. If I start getting money for this, then I'm going to want to prove it and I'm going to alter my evidence. And so I think that's why you see the altered evidence for the globe and people like PBS creating fake stuff and hiring these people to create fake footage of a helicopter going below the curve because there's money involved. They have a task. Go ahead. Here's your task. Shut up. Let's silence this flat earth movement. We're going to ban them on social media. And now we're going to put this on these platforms. There's money involved. And so there's bias involved.
Well, money doesn't equal bias, so that's not correct. You can do things for money and not have bias, but money wouldn't make a difference one way or the other, especially to YouTubers like me and Mr. Sensible. We don't get paid money to do this. So there's no money
You
there.
get
There's
paid
no
money to
bias
do
there.
this. You do the. I mean, you get paid. I mean, fairly decent, I'd assume.
For debunking philosophers. It has nothing to do with flat Earth.
You spend a lot of the time, though, in particular, and I see this with a lot of people that are atheists. They have this drive, like this passion, and I'm all for passion, but it's specifically to go after people who are yielding scientific results that support a flat Earth or a creator or whatever evidence they find, like the soft tissues in the dinosaur bones. When Mark Armitage found the soft tissue that he didn't expect, nobody could have predicted he would have found that. He's found it on every single continent. This has been something that's happened with their specimens. He got fired for that. Like, it's ridiculous. He should have got promoted. He's got no recognition. The guy's got like 2,000 followers on YouTube. He's not getting paid for this. He's doing his stuff for free. He's letting other people do experiments with the specimens that they have. But there seems to be a real big passion for things that would prove that we're at the center of creation, that there's a firmament above us. And there's a lot of things we would see if there were a firmament above us, if people were trying to hide it. They would have treaties in place that were peacefully held throughout Cold Wars and every conflict since. Like, we would have all the things that we see, we would have that. And it's interesting, the numbers that we see when you start looking at the globe stuff and the heliocentric, the fact that it's called heliocentric, that's the sun god right at the center. It's the same. We're just saying geocentric. The world's at the center. There's just a lot of things that would be there if it were flat and immovable, and those are the things we find when we investigate this. And then if I could find proof that it was curved, I would go right back to believing it, but I can't.
Well, so I don't really see the soft tissue in dinosaur bones as relevant. Like, so
it shouldn't be there. I mean, that's the thing.
Why?
If it was
Who said that? Who
is,
said that?
It shouldn't.
Who said that? Like, no one in science said that.
Look at the rate of decay of things, of tissue, flesh.
The rate of decay changes based off of its exposure to atmosphere and biological conditions. So if it's
these things were out in deserts, like he's found these things in like exposed conditions in the desert, like almost sticking out of the ground, and still dissolved them and found soft tissue. His videos,
again, that's not a problem. Like, nobody in science says that's a problem, because they could have been trapped in something like a tar pit and
they weren't in a tar pit. They were in a desert, like literally in a desert.
If it was a tar pit 75 million years ago, that doesn't mean it's going to be a tar pit today. So if it's frozen in a tar pit, the bones become fossilized. That means there are rocks. The rocks then seal the soft tissue inside. Yeah. No problem. So I don't see like why.
Yeah. Just check it out. I mean, just check it out.
Look at it. Like, this is not a thing that scientists claim is impossible. No one claims this is impossible.
I mean, you've probably never heard of it. Nobody's heard of it. Everybody I talked to, they've never heard of this guy.
Well, I don't know who the guy is. I do know about soft tissues being found in fossils. That's something that's not, I mean, it's rare, but it's not something that's impossible. No one claims that's impossible.
Who's done it before? Who else has done it?
I have no idea. I don't memorize their names, but you can just Google like soft tissue and dinosaur bones. It does happen.
It happens on every continent, though. It shouldn't, and it does.
Why? It could happen anywhere that there is a encapsulated fossil that doesn't have any exposure to air or oxygen. Like, I don't see that could happen on every continent. Sure, I don't see a problem with that. Like, I don't know where you're getting this conclusion that evolutionists infer it's impossible, because that's not a thing evolutionists ever said. It's mostly a creationist thing where people said, this is something that evolution claims impossible, even though they never said that.
But that's the thing. It's like everything is possible. It's like,
sure,
soft tissue on that, everything. It's like, no matter what the evidence is. Like, here's an example. Where the Red Sea crossing happened, there's a pillar, just like the ones talked about in the Bible, and it speaks of a pillar of fire. And years ago, I saw evidence that there was these coral encrusted chariot wheels on the bottom where this historical event was acclaimed to happen. And I thought, that's a lot of evidence, but somebody could have went there hundreds of years ago as a prankster and thought, what, we're going to use this to create these coral encrusted chariot wheels that look just like the ones of the time that this happened. But when you go to the shoreline where this happened, there's melted sand on the shoreline right where this happened, an entire shoreline covered with melted sand, just like something that would happen if there was a pillar of fire there. And we don't have the tools to fake that. If these people were faking this evidence and melting an entire shoreline evenly, it takes like 3,000 degrees to melt sand. I mean, this is stuff that you could go out and look at and see for yourself, and then, but it's like the world just looks at it, and it's like, it's possible.
I'm not
a really
following.
massive lightning bolt could have hit it. It's like there's always an explanation to explain things away.
Well, like if they predicted something like we would discover a beach, this particular beach, which was all melted or something, that would be a great novel prediction. I think I'm not quite following exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, but those things are there. Like these, it backs up what we've read. Like I read and I believed it was true, but then you go there and you see the evidence and you're like, that evidence goes beyond what I expected. I expected to see chariot wheels. I didn't think the pillar of fire would have been over 3,000 degrees. Like that is powerful. Like this stuff it's humbling because it's there. And I've never seen it. I've gone to all sorts of different beaches. I've been to green sand beaches in Hawaii, black sand. I've never seen a shoreline of melted sand. I've seen lava. I've seen all these different things, but this is not that. You can still see like glass puddles where this stuff just like where it happened back then in real time.
Well, I don't like, what's the prediction there?
It was an event that happened. And if it did happen, there would be evidence, and there is evidence. I mean, that's the prediction. And so you go there and you find the evidence. I never knew that there was melted sand there. I'd never, until somebody went down there and filmed it.
Like if I made a prediction that there was a pillar of fire and some beach somewhere on the world will have melted sand, like it's not a very good prediction. Like you need to say this beach, this location.
It's the exact location that the Red Sea crossing happened. And it's the only place in the world that has that phenomenon.
Well, there's a few problems with that. One is that there's no evidence the Exodus happened. There's no archaeological evidence the Exodus was real. Moses probably didn't exist. There's lots of problems with that one. But where is this beach covered in melted sand?
I can send you. I don't know the exact address, but I can send you the footage of it. I mean, it's clear. I mean, you can see stones infused in this melted sand. Like it's really cool. The guys chiseled away. They're stepping on it. Like it's right at the same spot where they found the chariot wheels. If you go out further, of course, the coral encrusted chariot wheels, the ones that have the exact same designs of the ones at that time. Like it's interesting stuff to look into. I mean, just look at the evidence.
Again, there's like no evidence of the Exodus. It's completely considered fake by like every historian, including the Israeli historians who have literally been looking for it for hundreds of years. But
I mean, there's footage of it, but that's
footage of the Exodus,
of the evidence.
What evidence?
The melted sand, the chariot wheels.
Well, so like melted sands, I'm not quite following what exactly it is because
I get you have to know the Exodus.
So, like sand moves. So if there was a fire thing that happened on a beach 2,000 years ago, that sand would be gone. It wouldn't be there anymore. So I don't know what
it's
exactly
like if lightning strikes sand, you've seen what it can do to it, right?
Yeah, it turns it into like little lightning shaped glass.
Yeah, like it melts it. Like it's like boom, instantly. It makes this. It's almost like when you put sand and you're making blown glass art or whatever you call that stuff.
Sure.
It would melt the fire melts the sand, and that's what happened. The pillar of fire that set there, where it says he peered at the Egyptians through the pillar of fire. That fire was a lot hotter than I imagined, and it melted the sand. And so to me, it's just something I never heard growing up, and it doesn't tell you that in the Bible. Hey, it melted the sand right there. It just tells you there was a pillar of fire,
Right. So if there was a pillar of fire, if there was a pillar of fire, we would expect a big thing of melted glass in one spot. That would be what we wouldn't expect it to be like the entire beach. That wouldn't make any sense.
Well, because it said that's where he was waiting. The Egyptians were waiting to cross right there. They were going after the Hebrews, right?
Yeah.
And when they were going after them, it said he stopped them in their tracks with the pillar of fire. So it was right there. They weren't going to go near it. So it had to be really hot. Like if you get a really big fire, you can't go near it. So it was keeping them back so that they could get far enough along. And then once they made it to the other side, then comes the Egyptians. I mean, I don't know if I saw a sea parted like that and I knew that the creator that was helping these people out was parting the water, I'm probably not going to jump in.
So the question is about like the prediction. So let's say that there was a pillar of fire. What would we expect to see if there was a pillar of fire A pillar of fire is like a specific location, right? There's a specific location. Let's say maybe it was 20 feet by 20 feet or something. Then we would expect to see glass maybe in a 40 to 60-foot radius around one particular spot in the beach. Now, if it was lightning, we'd expect to see little pieces of glass spread out across the entire beach. And so if if I'm trying to make your model into a prediction, we would expect to see there's a whole bunch of glass in one location and only one location. Is that what we see? Or do we see something that would mirror more lightning where there's a whole bunch of little pieces of glass spread out everywhere across the beach?
No, it's interesting. I've never seen melted sand like that before. I mean, it's like just that shoreline area where it happened is melted, and you can see like there's like a stone. It looks like a stone sticking out of a glass puddle. The only way I could describe it, like an actual solid, like giant river stone. Um, and it's melted solid sand. It's really it's something I've never seen when I've looked at things like magma formations, and you don't see it like that. It's extremely, it's unique footage, and I can send it to you. It's really
Sure.
it's something spectacular. But those things like that, it's evidence to me, but the real evidence is what I've experienced of the creator that goes beyond what this world can do, what any drug can do, what any, like, I'm talking like the deepest, darkest parts of my life. And I've had moments of atheism type or atheistic type thoughts way back, like in college, and things happened since then that just broke me right out of that. And I mean, I was in a dark place when the Father healed me the first time, and I was expecting sort of the wrathful being that the world tries to make him out to look like. You'll burn forever and ever if you're a sinner and you die, you're going to burn for all eternity, and all these worldly lies that they make about him to scare people away. That a lot of the mainstream religious groups keep and teach to this day. I didn't experience that. When he healed me in the blink of an eye, he showed me that there's a loving Father that gives us rules and guidelines to save our life. And the reason I wanted to end my life and kill myself was because I leaned on the world for my happiness. I wanted my job. I wanted my athletic success. I wanted to have the specific person that I was engaged to stay in my life. And then everything fell apart. You know, you kind of have those moments where you just want to end it all. And that was mine for me. But I reached out to a Father that I'd pretty much turned my back on, not really 100%, but put him on the back burner, and didn't expect him to be there. And there he was. And so he healed me in the blink of an eye. When I say in the blink of an eye, it was like a lightning bolt struck me. I've
Well,
never
I
felt
know.
anything like it since. And I don't do drugs. I've never had any kind of like psychedelic experience, but that moment when I was healed in the blink of an eye, it was something I've, to this day, like, and not just being healed, but being shown why I was on the ground crying my eyes out and wanting to end my life. Like, it was a powerful moment, and it happened. And from then on, I kind of got back into the world again and got distracted. And there was a few more miracles that happened right after. Um, I think it was probably 7 or 8 years after that miracle that two more miracles happened. And that's what brought me down to my humble point where I was like, you know what? Just show me the truth about creation. And this is a quote. This is what I said. I said, show me the truth about creation. I said, I don't care how crazy it sounds. I want to see the truth, because I knew something was off. I didn't know what. I just knew that things weren't quite adding up. Um, and that's when he brought me the truth about creation and started showing me the firmament and the footage of it, and the proofs that were out there that the word was true, the Exodus happened and all that. Like, that stuff came after. It wasn't like I don't, it sounds, when you see this movement, like when I first saw things that talked about flat earth, I thought these guys are just stoners, new agers, people out there that are really high. Like, I'm not gonna look into this nonsense. But I had to get really humble before I would, and it took a lot to humble me enough to even look into it. And I don't I don't think that people that believe in the globe are dumb. I mean, I had miracles happen while I believed in it. I had I felt like I was extremely intelligent when I believed in it. I felt like that's all I did. I mean, I had my master's degree and I still believed in it. I waited until right after to become a fool to the world. But I think that's why the Bible tells us the wisdom of this world is foolishness to our Father. because when you look at it, you start seeing that you have to become a fool to the world to really find his wisdom. And you start seeing things like the curvature of the earth is 0.666 feet per mile squared. The speed around the sun was 66,600 miles. You know, the tilt was 23.4 degrees with a remainder of 66.6 degrees. Like there's just so many different things that start showing up when you're looking into this stuff that shows you there's a reason that it's wisdom, but it's the wisdom of this world, and it's damaging. It's damaging to people.
Well, I think if you look into numbers, you can find any number you're looking for if you look long enough, because numerology works that way. But
Yeah.
Two questions there was, you said that this couldn't be replicated by natural processes or something along those lines, or drugs or something. One, I'm curious why you think that, because I had a very similar experience. I had major suicidal depression for 30 years ish, and it was cured instantly. But mine was not from God. It was from sex with Instagram models. That was what cured me magically in the same very well. It was completely just suicidal depression overnight, completely not. Very happy to be alive. And so this phenomenon that you're describing is actually pretty common among humans for a variety of reasons, not just God related. So I
But
don't see.
yeah, but yours was just like happiness. Like you found some sort of meaning, some sort of purpose, some sort of like physical, but those physical things were like temporary. This, like I've had the physical pleasures that you can have of this world, and they're good, but they have a climax, and that's it. That's
We
it.
were right. The physical
Yeah.
pleasures thing is separate here. There's two different parts of the brain being activated. For people with major depression, the cause of that major depression can be many different things, and what can cure them of that major depression can be caused by something like physical pleasure. But the physical pleasure part isn't what matters.
Yeah.
It's the releasing of the depression part that matters. So there's two different
Yeah.
emotions there.
Well,
Um,
that the reason why the reason why I know that it wasn't like something I thought or something I did. I was actually, just to kind of paint the scene. It's dark outside. I'm out in a driveway. Um, I'm on my hands and knees. I'm crying. I'm having my pity party. I'm just like, I don't want to go on like this. If this pain stays like this, I don't want to live this. I don't want to live like this. I want to end it. I don't want to live like this. And the Bible talks a lot about faith, but I remember I tried to like reach up my hand. I'm still on the ground at this point, and I just said, Father, I know that this is not your will for me to hurt like this. I said, um, but I don't want to live like this anymore. But I said, I know that you can heal me, and I trust you. And when I said I trust you, those three words, I trust you, as soon as the word "you" came out of my mouth, it was like, I trust you. Boom! I'm up. I'm standing, or it felt like I was floating. I know that sounds crazy to anyone who hasn't experienced this. I thought I was floating. I had to look down to see that my feet were on the ground. I don't know how I got to my feet, but I looked down and my feet were touching the ground, and I was shocked. And so while I'm standing there, I still feel like I'm being held up. I don't feel like I'm really standing on my own. He started showing me things, and the things that he was showing me was so clear. Like I have never left you. I have always loved you. Things that I thought against him, that I thought, you're punishing me because I did bad. You're punishing me because, I mean, imagine you have a child and you say, son, look both ways before you cross the road. And your son's like, whatever, I'm hyper. I just had, some caffeine. Runs out, gets ran over. Did you design that rule so that when he messed up, you could go over and go, that was bad. I'm going to spank your butt. Like, you're going to pick this kid up and you're going to be like, I've got to fix you. Like, you're my child. And that's what I experienced. And it was something that blew me away, because that's not the image that the world painted to me of the creator. And so it was that's how I knew it wasn't a drug. I knew it wasn't some like, oh, I went through some 12-step process. It was instantaneous. The next day I felt great. I felt so great. Everybody's like, you want to go to a bar? You want to drink? I know your fiance just broke up with you. You lost your job. And I'm like, no, I feel good. I want to hang out with somebody and talk and have a conversation. So I ended up uniting with someone that is now my wife. She was my childhood sweetheart, my first girlfriend at age 9, back when I was a Mac daddy, and had a little girlfriend. It was older than me. She was 10, I was 9, but didn't stop me. But I met back up with her, and I hadn't seen her in 15 years, and now we've got 5 kids together. And it's crazy how that turn of events happened. But that was what one of the things that changed me, but it wasn't enough to turn me all the way around. I'm stubborn and slow to learn when I've had a good thing, and so I kind of got caught up in the world again. We get caught up looking for a job, trying to find happiness, and
well, I'm happy
having a
for you. I
beautiful.
definitely think that's
Yeah,
a great story, and I'm happy that it's benefited you in your life. But I still don't realize or don't understand how that could not be solved by natural processes, because that's a story that
yeah,
a similar kind of thing has happened to millions of people all over the world, where they've had very transformational experiences that are just like instantly happen after a prayer or a thought pattern or an experience. It doesn't take
no,
a lot. They're rare, they're not common,
yeah,
but they do happen at a decent rate, enough that we can measure them and see that it doesn't just happen in regards to religious experiences, but to football teams, to Instagram models, to rich and famous things, depending on the brain structure of the individual. Epileptics can have this in different conditions. So this the experience you're describing seems to be one that is well explained by natural processes in the brain. I don't see why that would necessitate it
mhm,
being a god, because
mhm.
I've had a very similar experience, and I know many people who have. So I don't see why that would
But if
require a
you know,
god.
if you've experienced the Holy Spirit, though, that would mean something more powerful. I mean, that's
Well,
to
that's
me.
the part I think that is, like, an assumption on your part, because I understand from, like, from my worldview, what I think of as a relationship with an Instagram model is something that's very, very special to me. It's very powerful to me, and to other people, it wouldn't be, because to them, it's not as important as it is to me.
Mhm,
And the same thing would apply to the Holy Spirit from your perspective, because it's so important and ingrained in your life and your perspective. You can only see that thing as being, it must be more special than anybody else's special experience. Just like I see being with Instagram models as must be more special than anybody else's
mhm,
special experience. But there's no actual evidence of this. This is just like your subjective experience. And when we look at the brain structures and do comparative experiments to test how it's infected people's lives in psychology, those all come up to be about the same. It's like this is a common thing that happens all the time, happens all over the world. I don't see why your particular experience would be any different than mine or anybody else's who's had equally transformative experiences of different things.
mm, yeah. I mean, I respect it that you feel that way. I know with the worldly pleasures that I've had, and anything I could try to go out and experiment with, any worldly pleasure, any lust I fulfill, or anything. Um, I've never felt anything that can come close to that, and it's something that I want to experience again. And I feel like I could say, and it's I don't know. It's one of those things that unless you've experienced it, you can't really explain it. Like it's that joy unspeakable. Like I can't put it into words. I've only been alive for 39 years, but in that 39 years, I've only been at my lowest low once and my highest high once, and they were right at the exact same time. I mean, just smack dab together. Um, so
Well,
I mean,
yeah, I would agree, though. I
yeah,
would say that I see that everybody's brain is differently and they value different things differently. So some people watch football and they get a big high off
yeah,
of watching football. I don't. I think sports ball is incredibly boring. Can't
yeah.
stand watching any versions.
Me too.
And the same thing applies in the case of the Holy Spirit. I tried the Holy Spirit like many atheists,
Mhm.
completely worthless. I felt the Holy Spirit and it was about as much as a hot candle on my butt, completely a waste of time. But for me, the Instagram model was equally as powerful an experience for me as the Holy Spirit was for you, because we have different brain structures. We have different things that we value to different
Mhm.
levels that cause that extremely powerful emotional response. And
Yeah.
so my question is why do you think that it must necessarily be the case that only the Holy Spirit could ever cause this powerful an experience in anyone, rather than it worked that way for you, but other people could have that experience from other things?
Yeah. Well, I would encourage them if they experience something like that, go and keep communicating with whoever you were talking to when that happened, you know. But I think that the world likes to muddy the water so that people like you, and if you're raised in a religious house or different religions, Catholicism or whatever it is, there the truth about who the creator is altered to where they don't really have a meaningful enough relationship with him to get to know him in the first place. That's why when you look at every world religion and then you look at Christianity, there's 45,000 different denominations, as if somebody's trying to divide and slice up and conquer this one group. And you look at all the others and you don't see that. same exact division, persecution. It's with that one, and it's like it's a fairy tale to so many, but it's like it's the only fairy tale I've ever known where people are going and getting burned at a stake, burned alive, burned with their copies of this book that talks about it, that talk about love. I mean, what's so dangerous about loving your neighbor? What's so crazy about that? About having a system of life that doesn't involve taxes? You know, like perfect things that help you feed the poor. You know, when you grow your farm, don't harvest the outer corners because there's going to be poor people. Like let them have food. Like all these different things out of love that we have, like this perfect system. It's like we just would rather have worldly stuff and a worldly king and pay our taxes. And you know, I give up 31% of my paycheck, just like it's nothing. It's just it's
Me
crazy.
too.
Yeah, it sucks. There was a perfect system, but we wanted a king. We wanted an earthly king.
Well, I don't. So that would be something I'd also disagree upon. I think that
Oh.
the biblical system isn't perfect. It's less good than the system we have today. Like the amount of charity that has been done to help poor people through churches and other means of voluntary giving of money has been less successful at helping people than government programs like the NHS, Social Security, welfare, Medicaid, and Medicare. Those programs have better healthcare everywhere in the world where there's a government enforced tax-based system that gives healthcare than any of the religious countries. Not even close. There's no comparison. Everywhere in the world, the numbers, all of the stats, everything shows government supported healthcare does better in every single case.
But if I didn't give 31% of my paycheck, that would give me 10% that I could give, you know, to every poor person I know. You know, I could give a lot.
But yeah, but that doesn't work though. Like when we look at the countries that do that and employ that kind of charity, it doesn't work. It doesn't cure poverty. It doesn't lower the homelessness rate. It doesn't improve education levels. It doesn't improve the malnutrition levels. Like it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. The ones that do work are the government programs. They work. Like EITC is the most successful program to reduce people in poverty ever. Ever. It's massively successful. It's a government program and they double your income. They say if you work, if you get a job and you earn under $5,000, we're just going to double it. We're just going to give you another 5,000. That's the government program. And it's beautiful. It is the most successful program to reduce people from poverty ever in any developed country. I mean, it's not a charity program. It's not list people can choose to give their money. It's a government program that has specific stipulations that work, and charity systems don't. Like the church-based charity systems just don't have that success rate. They don't actually make a lasting impact. The ones that do are the government programs, and so I don't think going off the Bible is a great system.
We got a lot of homeless people lined up on the side of the streets, though. I mean, there's a lot.
Yeah, but a lot less than there were. Like we've cut global poverty in half. That was one of the goals of the EU was to cut global poverty in half in a 20-year period or a 50-year period. I forget what it was. And they accomplished it about like 5 years earlier than the goal.
Yeah.
Churches never did that. Churches never cut global poverty in half.
I don't know.
Governments, though.
I know the Pope's like a multi-billionaire. So
True.
I mean, yeah, like, but these are the ones up top. Those are the ones that have been changing the truth since right after the resurrection. Because we're getting close. We're getting close to that seventh day. If you look at the biblical
Revelation would be a phenomenal novel prediction. Like if the things in the book of Revelation actually happened, like if a quarter of the Christians just disappeared and their clothes fell to the ground, that would be phenomenal evidence for Christianity. Like 100% novel prediction, something we didn't expect. That would be great.
Well, it's not going to be like people are telling, like with the whole Left Behind series. It's not going to be like that. It's going to be a millennial reign coming up soon. It's going to be different. It's going to be a lot different than the whole you die, you go to heaven, or you die, you burn in hell forever. It's not going to be like that. That's what a lot of people think Christianity is. And when you actually read and study, that's a lie. The wicked have always been said to perish. There's the second death. It's actually called the second death. It's not called the second eternal punishing forever and ever. It's called the second death. And so the wicked, they're going to perish. Justice is going to happen. A lot of people think, oh, my grandmother died. Now she's going to burn for an eternity. No, that's not going to happen. The wicked will perish, the ones who practice lawlessness. And so our goal is to save people from perishing. I don't want you to perish. I don't want, it's not going to be a pleasant thing, but it's eternal in that you can't undo it. It's an eternal punishment. It's not an eternal punishing. So people can choose if you want to have the physical the here and the now, and then that's it. That's fine. He's not going to force people to be like, I want to live forever. Because some people do not want eternal life. They just don't. Like they're like, I'm good. I'm good just having this little short little span here. YOLO. My goal is to live twice.
Well, so that's another thing. I think that there's lots of ways to improve upon the Bible. Like one, let's take the Sermon on the Mount as a good example of what people consider to be a really good moral doctrine. Like, could that be improved? Yes. Great way to improve it. Just say, include this one line, thou shalt not own other human beings as property. That one line added would make it like a million times better. There's a good way to improve like something people consider to be the strongest point in the Bible. Another way to improve it would be is I think the most moral world God could create is a world where it would be physically impossible to force anyone to do anything they don't consent to doing. You still get free will, still get all your decisions, all your intentions and your desires. You just can't force anybody else to do anything they don't consent to doing. Moral problem solved. You got a great, perfect, morally world. You're done, and you still get free will. I think that would have been a great way to improve it. So I think that the Bible is not a perfect system. There's lots of ways to improve it that are pretty.
No,
pretty
you have
easy.
free will. The Bible's. I mean, you have free will. We've always had that.
Well, I mean, we can have free will and not have the ability to force other people to do things they don't consent to doing. So it's keeping the free will that we have, and also you can't murder people.
Yeah. Because that's one of the commandments.
Well, I just make it a law of physics. I just say it's just physically impossible to do, and that would be
make it to where you just can't.
Yeah. So like Stephen Hawking, he has free will, right? Stephen Hawking's like quadriplegic, can't move his arms or his legs, but he still has free will, right?
Yeah.
So you can have free will and not be able to murder people. There's no contradiction there. So it's not too hard to just be like, hey, we could just make a world where you have free will and you can't murder people. Problem solved.
That was the original design with creation. There was no death. There was harmony. And we are, with free will, we're horrible at following rules. You know, it's one rule, just don't eat from this one fruit. And you do that. And he said, in this day, you will die. Well, you know, that serpent's like, oh, you're not going to die. And you think, and I remember being a kid thinking, well, he didn't die that day. So the serpent was kind of right. What in the heck's going on? But you look at books like Jubilees and you look at the heavenly time. It says a day is 1,000 years with heavenly time. Adam didn't live to be 1,000 years. He died that day. And then you keep looking at the timeline we're on now. We're approaching that seventh day, which would be that day of rest, that millennial reign. And so death is called the enemy. It's the last enemy to be defeated. But when you go to your local funeral and somebody died, they're like, it was God's will for this person to die. Now he's got another angel. And in reality, death is the enemy. He's not going around going, who can I kill next? I need more angels. You know, the flawed views of who he is and how he works is totally different. Bad things are going to happen. We chose death. We chose to step away from perfect harmony. And so things are going to get back to the way they were.
I just think God could have just made it better by saying every individual, no one can force that individual to do things they don't consent to doing. Then eat the apple. Go ahead, knock yourself out, and that individual can then choose to accept the consequences or not.
Yeah.
But each individual gets that choice. Forcing a whole bunch of individuals to say, hardening Pharaoh's heart, that's immoral, shouldn't do that. Turning the Lot's wife into salt, no, that should be optional. She'd be like, no, I'm not going to do that. That would be great. Sodom and Gomorrah, give everyone the option. They can just choose. Do you want to get destroyed? We're going to go to
they were warned. They were warned. I mean,
no, I'm being more specific. So I'm saying like, they get the option to be like, no, you don't get to destroy me. Just nope. Just full God doesn't get to touch me kind of option.
Yeah.
So,
but you gotta, we get the PG-13 version of what's going on. I mean, they're sodomizing kids, they're raping people, they're starving the poor, they're doing all these things, and it's like, hey,
those are the other examples too. Like,
that's free will. But
no, that's not free will. This is the point that I think is important. God could have made it so each of those individuals, the kids, the poor people, every single one could have had the ability to not have been forced to do anything they don't consent to doing. Every conscious agent could have this new superpower. You can't be forced to do anything you don't consent to doing. All of that is solved.
Yeah, we're about to have that. With the elect are about to resurrect into incorruption. They're not going to be corruptible anymore. That's better than the angels. The angels, the fallen, when you look back, they had free will. They were able to make a pact. They made a pact that's very similar to the Jesuit oath. It's very similar to the Masonic oath, that they are going to agree on this one thing, and it's a binding pact. And if they break it, have you ever read the Jesuit oath?
Maybe a long time ago. I haven't read much.
It's freaky. I wouldn't read it because it'd probably get you banned. I mean, it's talking like, I don't even want to say the things that it says that they would do to infants and stuff. I mean, it's like it's evil.
But that's God's fault. God did that. God designed the world that
people
way.
that are set against the Father. They're set against His creation. A Jesuit invented the Big Bang. A Jesuit is the Pope. The Pope is a Jesuit. All these people, the Pope is actually the first Jesuit Pope. And the cool thing is, you know, you look back at Washington, D.C. In D.C., D.C. was called Rome before it became D.C.
Well, I don't see a problem with any of that. I see a problem with God designed the world badly. God could have designed it better.
No, it was designed great. We chose the bad. We've made choices that have led us to a worse existence. And He's always sent people to help us set us straight. Give us rules. Here, I'm going to write this in stone. Okay, now they're already worshiping the golden calf. Okay, I'm going to send them.
So I don't see any problems with any of that. Just add this one extra law of physics.
Yeah.
You can't force anyone to do anything they don't consent to doing. Problem solved. All of that becomes fine. Golden calf, fine. Eating the apple, fine. Can't rape anybody who doesn't consent to it. Can't murder anybody who doesn't consent to it. Can't harm anybody who doesn't consent to it. All of those problems are solved. All of these could have been solved by God by adding this one extra law of physics. And you keep all of the sin, all of the evil, all of the free will, all that stuff is still there. The problem is God made the world bad. And He could have just made it better with adding an extra law of physics. Can't force people to do things they don't consent to doing. Problem solved. Everything is solved. World's perfect. Even with all the evil, even with all of the bad people who want to worship the golden calf, they can worship it as much as they want. They can never force anyone else to do anything they don't consent to doing. And that's it. That's all God needed to do to not be incompetent, I think.
Well, just ask Him about these things. Say, you know, why did you give us free will to where we could force our will on someone else? And like, you know, just
no. I want the free will. I want to keep the. Why did God not add a law of physics that it is impossible to force other people to do what they don't consent to do?
Then
So I want to keep the free will.
Then you're running into like video game type of barriers where it's like, I want to stab this person. Bing, I can't. Like, the free will goes away when you can't. And that's the thing. There would be no sin if it was like there was this barrier stopping us, you know, from doing it. Like, we have that free will. But when we resurrect.
That's why I asked about Stephen Hawking, because you granted Stephen Hawking has free will, right? But he has a barrier. He can't move his arms or his legs. He has the barrier, still has free will. So we know it's possible to have free will and have a barrier.
Yeah. Yeah, and that barrier could have been healed. I mean, I would have loved for him to have the faith instead of devoting his life to being like, I'm handicapped, I'm going to go against the Creator, you know, like to have him have the same miracle experience like I had and many others, you know, that have been healed. That would have been quite the
barrier was a physical barrier. He literally couldn't lift his arms. That's the barrier. So he couldn't harm other people. That's the barrier I'm talking about. So everybody could have a barrier. But
he still went to Epstein Island. Let's just put that out there. He's on the list. What did he do?
Well, not everybody who went to
Epstein around. Was he like I don't I don't want to get a mental image of that.
All right, we've been going for about almost 2 hours now. There are a few questions from the audience, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
Turing Test 2 asks, please ask John who his Papa Flurf is.
Papa Flurf.
I think that means the person who introduced you to being a flat earther, I think.
Yeah, well, that's again, like I asked that question for the Father to show me the truth about creation. And there was a video on YouTube. I think it was Rob Skiba talking about, he wasn't a flat earther yet. He was just questioning it. And I pulled that video up and I start listening to the things he's saying. And the Holy Spirit was like, this is true. Look into it. And I'm sitting there thinking, please no, please not. You know, like, I don't want this to be true. You know, it's just like you start going into it like, oh no, surely I'm going to find some footage that's going to debunk this whole nonsense. And you're trying to find uncut space footage, you know, launch footage beyond a few minutes. And I couldn't find it. I'm like, okay, we should have at least 30, 45-minute uncut footage. Nope, doesn't exist. No, Earth is a ball moving through space with the stars in the background to kind of reference that. Nope, doesn't exist. Like, you just kind of keep going from there. But it was Rob Skiba was the very first one that brought the concept into my mind. And then I kind of followed him do his testing the globe stuff. My Papa Flurf.
Right. Captain Morton asks, why doesn't he try psychedelics to see if it is a similar experience?
Why don't I try it? Because I've grown up around it. I have I have seen the stories, the testimonies. I mean, I've got students that have done these things. I've had relatives that have done these things, and I've watched them. I've watched the downward spiral. It's very rare. I have seen some people say, "Hey, I was a real arrogant business guy. You know, all I cared about was myself, and then I did psychedelics, and now I'm humble and I can kind of see things a little better." You know, or this cured this ailment. Like the herbs of the earth. Like you read the book of I forget which book it was, Jasher, or one of the lost books says he made the herbs of the earth to cure the sicknesses caused by demons. They do serve a purpose, these herbs of the earth, and so they can cure things, and we use them the wrong way, um, or we just think that this is some awful weed in the ground or something. But yeah, I don't want to risk um, going into some trip that you don't come out of. I had a friend that just died recently, or not recently. It's probably been about 7 or 8 years. He had his girlfriend got on shrooms and she got really drunk, and she brought him to a house where he ended up getting shot. She was beating on the door and trying to go in there, and the guy walked out there with a gun and shot my friend. And so never really seen good success stories from that. So I hope that answers the question.
All right. Thank you for the super chats. Some Dog Millionaire. Yes. If someone achieves inner peace and the same feeling Josh describes, except it's through belief in Satan, are those two different feelings? How can we know the difference?
Are those two different feelings?
I think he's comparing to your personal experience with the
there are powers of darkness. That's a really good question. Because I've experienced powers of darkness. I've literally experienced it. When I talked about having an atheist type of, I guess it was kind of like my mind back in college, going to this philosophy class and listening to these different thoughts in my head and thinking about infinite space and how far away the creator has to be. Like if we can't even, these stars that are light years away and we know there's stuff beyond that. Like I'm thinking about all this stuff and I'm like, man, he's so far. There's just, even though I've had the Holy Spirit and I've had all this stuff, this was like age, I don't know, 21, 22. I started getting into this deep, dark, like he's not real, and it's like, and within, I think like the next day, I had this super freaky, like demonic experience at night. A lot of people call it sleep paralysis. It was worse than that. It was like, I could see, I don't know, it was creepy. I don't want to go into details, but I instantly woke up and started praying and I had to, because it was dark. And since then, I've never experienced that type of dark presence again. But there are powers of darkness, and the Satanists, they're more devout than Christians. It's weird. They go out and they to them the spiritual world is more real than the physical world. They know that, and so there was this one guy. Oops, did I lose you?
No, I'm here.
Okay, sorry. I accidentally clicked off the screen.
Gotcha.
There was this one guy, he was a Satanist, and he moved into a new town, and the people that were around there were praying for him. They knew he was a Satanist. He moved in, and they go around, they use these demons to help them achieve certain tasks, do certain things. Well, all of a sudden, he starts feeling like it's not working anymore. He can't do anything. So he goes to his high priest and says, "What's going on? I'm not demonically charged like I was. Something is hindering me from these spiritual powers that I've had access to for years." And the high priest said, "That means you're being angelically oppressed. Essentially, people are praying for you, and the angels are stopping your demons from doing what they normally do." And so he ended up going to a church trying to find out what more about this matter. And as soon as he starts doing this, he starts hearing "kill yourself, kill yourself, kill yourself," like all these like suicidal type thoughts. But these people grabbed a hold of him, they prayed for him and set him free, and he's never looked back. It's like he came out of that. There is powers there. There's powers of darkness. And that's what we are up against. We're not up against flesh and blood like the Bible says. So you can experience those things. You can try to prove that demons are real. You're going to find out they are. When Jesus talked to him, he knew that they had a name.
That would be great evidence.
Yeah.
Tell me how to do this. That would be phenomenal evidence.
Yeah,
please, I mean, especially if they can make me do stuff. If they can help me win the lottery, I will. Yeah. I like the demons.
Well, that's the thing. They're limited. That's why psychics can't win the lottery. Psychics can tell you something about a dead loved one, and they can tell you with accuracy about your uncle that passed away or whoever, and they can do it because they're called familiar spirits. These are spirits that are familiar with those people, so they can tell this person, "Hey, this person had an uncle that died and they had a red truck." Like they can tell them certain things because they're familiar spirits, but they can't tell you the lottery number is going to be this, and that. Otherwise, all the Satanists would be multi-billionaires. I mean, it would be ridiculous. But they have their limitations, and But that's why we do see things that are real. We do see psychics doing things. My grandmother was a psychic, and she was renowned for it. Apparently, I found out recently. I'm like, oh my goodness, I didn't know that. But these things are real. Or they wouldn't tell us to do it. Witchcraft is real. This stuff it's real stuff. You have this stuff going on. He's not going to tell you not to do it if it's just some Disney fairy tale. And that's why
all of those would be phenomenal pieces of evidence to support a spiritual world. I would like to see any of that, because all the times I've investigated, all of it seems to fail 100% of the time.
Yeah.
I would love to see evidence of demons or angels or magic and stuff. That would be awesome.
And then sometimes they're going to leave you alone and let you prosper, man. I'm telling you, like, if you really, if they see you're doing a good job and you're just like, and you're a smart guy, you're, and all these things you got going for you, they're like, we're just going to let this guy prosper and just keep doing what he's doing. He doesn't need our help, but there's different levels, and a lot of people are born into this stuff, and that's why they have their systems with their high priest and all of that. They try to mimic what the Father has. They have Aleister Crowley has his Book of the Law, and it talks about bringing the stars, these demons that we're talk about bringing the stars into the hearts of men. And they're the high priest of infinite space and deep space, and they use all this terminology like we see. And this was back like in the early 1900s, maybe late 1800s. I can't remember the timeline. And that's, we grew up. You got to be a rock star. You got to be a superstar. You got to wish upon a star. Everything was always about the stars. And then you look at the Book of Enoch that talks about how demons were made, why they're so angry, why they're so ticked off. This book had a prophecy about the heliocentric model and the planets. It literally, in chapter 80 of the Book of Enoch, it tells us that the chiefs of the stars, or planets, are going to leave their orbital paths, and that someday a generation of sinners is going to err in their understanding about what these things are. They're going to take them to be gods, and literally every chief star or planet is named after a god, and they're the only ones that have transgressed their paths. So it's like it's a prophecy that was found in the Dead Sea Scrolls that existed before Christ. So these are texts that they used, and they had sundials that worked.
Well, the stars were named before the Bible.
This was back in 2000 BC. The chiefs of the stars leaving their orbital paths. But the Book of Enoch predates the Dead Sea Scrolls. I mean, they had it in the Dead Sea Scrolls, but it was older than that.
Well, the names of the stars predate the entire Bible, both the Old and New Testament.
It would have to be written in a scroll somewhere that they had.
Yeah, Hinduism. The oldest texts are from Hinduism and Jainism. Those are the two oldest documents we have. Yeah, they've been named for a while. Mm-hmm. All right, next chat is the ungoogleable man. Can he build a geocentric model that explains how Mars does a loop in the sky over time?
Can I build a model? I'm not a model builder, so probably not. I would love to have those abilities. But it's funny. I grew up, we tried making the solar system models when we were kids. And the Bible actually tells us that not to make things in the heavens, not to make graven images of things in the heavens. And here I am making, being so excited to know the order of the planets and sing it out loud and, going home, showing my parents what I could do. But no, I'm not into model making. But the ones that you see online are not to scale. The ones of the firmament being like this giant dome. I'm not saying I know how high it is, but it would be way closer than what we're seeing.
Well, that actually leads to an interesting question, because there are entire to scale 3D models of the heliocentric model. There's like 3D renderings you can download that have everything, and you can just type in the date and see what's going on, and just click the play button, increase the speed, and all of the phenomenon we see, like the eclipses, the orbits, all of those things are mapped perfectly onto this model. And it would be interesting to see if you can create a flat Earth 3D model that can also have an accurate description of all the things we see, because I don't think you can.
Yeah, you can. I mean, I'm not, if I got really good with computers, really good with 3D design animations, I could probably do it that way. But as far as making a model that moved, oh my goodness, all the moving parts, the stars have paths in the firmament. So their paths are within that firmament. They could go any direction they want to go. And that's why you see the motions that you see. You see perfect circles. The pole star never moves. Orion's belt stays right there at the equator, just all year round while the sun's going up and down. And so, I mean, it's something
Well, that's a great
yeah.
prediction that we can both
Yeah.
make, is that you predict you can make such a model. I predict you cannot make such a model. So if you could, that would be evidence for your side. But I don't think any flat earther can make a to scale model, whichever scale they want to use,
Yeah.
that can accurately represent all of the data that we see in the stars and the orbits of the planets, or
Yeah.
that you think are in the firmaments, or the sun and the moon. Whereas we have these to scale models that you can just download online. I think there's like space something, space. I was in my last flat earth debate where I mentioned it, and we have it. It's in the link,
Yeah.
where there's an actual to scale model of the solar system that you can download and play
Yeah.
with to show all this stuff.
Well,
That
you and
works.
yeah, we only see the stars. Like if you go out and look at the stars every single night for 6 months, right? And so here's the sun. Here's
Space
me.
Engine. Thank you,
Yeah.
IR Hanley. Space Engine is
Yeah.
what it's called.
Okay. So here's the sun, and here's little Earth over here, and I can only see the stars when I'm on the back side. And so every 6 months when I'm looking at these stars, I should be on the other side of the sun. And so just go out and look at the stars, see if it looks like that to you. Look at them for 6 months at the exact same time of night. See if you're going around the sun. I mean, I've done that, and that's one of the first things I did was I'm going to go out and look at the stars every single night for 6 months straight. I'm hoping to get to the other side of the sun, and I'll put this this little theory away, but I never really did.
Gotcha. All
Somebody
right.
said.
Next question. That's the same question that was up there.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Read it.
Oh no, I need to change it. So
Okay.
Here's a question from Jake U. Where do spaceships go when they go up?
When they go up, there's Point Nemo, which is it's called a spaceship graveyard. Most secluded part out there. There's lots of places they can go. The places we can't travel would be a really good place for them to go. Places like the Bermuda Triangle, where people vanish, witnesses vanish, would be a good place for them to go. There's lots of places beyond the 60th South Parallel. All the things that would be possible, but you can just chart their paths. They allegedly fly with the curvature of Earth, and you could see their rainbow type paths when they're not that far away. But meanwhile, all the planes and everything leaving chemtrails, contrails, whatever you call them, perfectly flat and level. So if they're flying with the curve, it's a much smaller Earth. Even if you look at their paths from the side, they're obviously going up and back down. Somebody said this idiot reproduced. Yes.
There are lots of trolls in the chat. Chat is known for trolls.
Yeah. I love you guys. I did reproduce, and my body, the thing about sperm is really cool that never, it packs nutrients for its journey. It's going to need energy for that journey. And never in the history of those early ones would one have been able to leave the body, not make it, and come back and warn the others, hey, you need to pack some fructose with you, buddy, or you're not going to make it to this egg that's somehow being released. I mean, and our body continuously makes it. A woman, on the other hand, she's born with what she's going to have. Could you imagine if we were born with the amount of sperm we're going to have? We would run out when we're 13. Like the father knew, hey, I can't give them a limited supply of this. They would run out. Like every need is thought for when it comes to this, to intelligent design and reproducing, the body parts fitting together, all that good stuff.
Cannon, thank you for the super chat. Really appreciate it. Next question was Travis Statham asks, have you seen the round Earth from the video feeds of the Artemis 1 rocket?
Have I seen them? Yes. Yes, I have. Yeah, I've done videos on them. You can feel free to check those out.
Gotcha. Mac asks, is there anything that would change your belief in God or the flat Earth?
Since I know the Father personally, that's one that I just can't undo. I've had too many miracles. So that the flat Earth, I've been looking at evidence for the past 7 years, or close to 7 years now, and it would have to be me personally at this point going and seeing it myself, going 1,000 miles away. I would risk going through those Van Allen belts or that man-made bubble surrounding Earth that NASA tells us about to see it. But you can't. If I went straight up, I know I'd smack into something. I'd have to follow that curved path, and or I could do the Blue Origin where I go straight up, straight back down, and land near where I took off. But that wouldn't with the curved windows and all that stuff. But yeah, they go as high as we know we can go, and they go straight back down. So yeah, it would take a lot. I'd have to go a few thousand miles away to believe it, and have to go myself.
So there's a few questions here about why don't you just go and get evidence of the dome? Like, can't we just go if there's really a dome there, you should be able to go and like.
Yeah, there would be some sort of treaty stopping that from happening. People have gone. We've got videos of people in boats trying to go, and giant military force presence shows up and says, "You need to turn around." And so,
well, you can buy a ticket to Antarctica. Like there are tickets.
You can.
Available.
I've wanted to. That was the very first thing I tried to do when I was, going like, I've got to go down there. I need to go do some exploring. I want to be this, brave explorer and go down there. I go to look up tickets because my wife loves to travel. We're poor. We're a one income teacher family, but she's a math genius and she's figured out how to save money and coupon, do all those things, so we can travel to Ireland, London, Rome.
Oh, dude, poop
everywhere.
donation, dude. I get paid like $2 to $4 grand a month for poop donation. It's amazing.
What's that?
Stool donation. Rebiotics is a place locally here. You donate stool. They pay you like $30 to $60 per donation. They can do twice a day. It's like 60 donations a month, which is about $2 grand minimum.
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna look into that.
Awesome.
I'm gonna put my honey. You're working from home.
Well, you have to donate there. It's just like a medical.
Oh darn! You can't just send it via FedEx.
Mail it FedEx. Yes. Hey, dude, I got you a package. Can you pick this one up?
Yeah, they wouldn't be happy with that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna look into that. But yeah, I lost my train of thought with the poop. Oh, why don't we go to the edge? Yeah, I looked into the tickets for that, and it was like 40,000, which is almost what I make in a year. And I thought I could not sacrifice to go. And then it's like, oh, but you can go to this tourist spot and you can't go anywhere else. Like you're stuck right there. They still have those laws. You can't go beyond. So it would take a large effort. And I think the Antarctic Treaty doesn't expire until like the 2040s. I could be wrong. It's been a long time since I've researched that. But again, you look at the things that world powers are agreeing peacefully on, and it's guarding Antarctica and space, which keeps the globe alive. And now it's the pharmakeia worldwide. So it's things they agree on peacefully. Everything else is a show. It's ridiculous. But yeah, I would love to go there and explore. There's accounts of somebody in the military going there and studying what they called sky ice, which is really cool. It was some cool accounts there, but not that that's proof. I would like to go myself. And who knows, when you get out there and try to explore, it could just keep going. The Bible says the end won't come until every nation, until it's reached the four corners of the earth, the gospel of the kingdom. And they don't want the world to end. What better way to not let it end by just keeping people from going out there to see another nation or somebody else out there.
Yeah, I don't, because that would be a good way to do predictions that are contradictory between our two models. Is there a firmament or not? And I think that you're never going to find one.
Oh, and another one, we've got footage of the firmament. You can check it out. Our firmament playlist has it. And so you can check it out while it's still there. It was censored for a while. It came back when Nova deleted their footage. And so it's there for now.
Yeah, I'd definitely like you to check out the Mr. Sensible video of actually going the thing that shows the direct curvature of the world. That's pretty cool. See, next question is from GG asks, what are your thoughts on peer-reviewed papers, published papers contradicting your worldview? And do you have any that are supporting you?
Do I have any that are supporting me? Well, I mean, it depends on what you classify as like peer-reviewed. Like their peers looked at it, people that believe the way they believe looked at the papers and said, all right, that's.
Well, I think there's like specific journals that are classified as peer-reviewed journals, and what they do is they have a double-blind peer review study group that goes through the papers, and there's that publication process, which is what qualifies a journal as a peer-reviewed journal.
But that just puts me taking other people's words for it. I mean, there's a lot of things that are peer-reviewed, and it's biased, people's words, and it gives you trust issues when you do full investigations into the fraud and the agendas behind it, and the stuff going on and why they would invent these things, and why the funding is only for people who can produce fraudulent or real evidence or allegedly real evidence that supports these things or theories. I could just sit around and make theories and be a millionaire if it supports a Big Bang theory, you know, like, but if I find evidence that's footage of the firmament, anything that proves anything else, you're going to be silenced. And to me, it's like you're silencing a large part of a community of scientists that could really, we could all just get along. Like I would love to see people just get along and actually.
Well, I don't think, because
Yeah.
I don't see that happening from my experience with the scientific community. Double-blind peer review, they don't see who or what the paper, like who published the paper. Your names are gone, and all they do is they see the context and they test the context, and that's it. They're not allowed to see who wrote it, so they
No.
don't know what it's advocating for in that kind of a way. And there
No.
are peer-reviewed published papers that go against mainstream science. Like there is an entire journal dedicated to parapsychology, and it's a
Mhm.
legitimate journal. And I don't believe any of it, but it's a
Yeah.
peer-reviewed journal. And so I don't think that there is this bias in science that prevents publication of strange results. I just think that the methodology used by
Yeah.
most flat earthers doesn't meet the criterion of science to be able to get published. I think
Yeah.
they could do the work and become scientists to publish these things. It's possible. I just don't think any of them ever have done
Yeah.
it.
I just, because it's so new. I mean, they're just like, here's what I have. Let me share it with the world. And that's what I like. I like that they're not after it for, I want to get peer reviewed. I want to have a big name. And they're just like, here's what I'm seeing. Here's the results I have. I'm sharing it with everybody. And to me, that's why why it grew so fast, because you had people around the world working on this stuff together in harmony. And it was really cool. And then it just got weird. People started almost like having trust issues against everybody, and just everybody's a shill and everybody's, and it got weird. And I'm like, you know, let's unite, because the whole the other side seems to be extremely united, peaceful, happy, holding hands. Um, I think we should be kind, and that's why I can't stand debates. They get so heated, they get so angry, and I'm like, that to me, it stops me from growing, because then even it's like the people, even if they find something they're not that supports what the person who just insulted them said, they're not going to want to believe it or try to prove it even further.
I think
They're
it
like,
depends on the person, because
yeah,
I enjoy debates like that, even against people who I hate.
yeah,
And even if they get something right, I'm going to admit they got something right, because that's just the way my brain works. I have high
yeah,
functioning autism, so if they present a good point and they're right about it, I'm like, damn it, you got me on that one. That's a good one.
yeah,
I remember there's an example of that with oh, what's his name? He was one of the earlier professors I debated against. I like him a lot. Randall Rouser. Randall Rouser was bringing up the position of fallibilism, and I didn't know what that was, and he was right
yeah,
on that one, and I was wrong on that one, and that was a good
yeah,
one. That was a good learning opportunity. So I think it depends on the person, if they can have the maturity to learn from people who they don't like very much or not.
yeah. I don't know. Some people, I guess, they just make your blood boil because they just insult and they have that tone, and it's like it's hard to really like, have a good conversation. And I don't know. It's hard for me to partake in those, but I do listen to sometimes the things they say. But even the flat earthers, there's a lot of them that'll speak and debate, and I don't like the way they talk to other people.
Nathan Thompson.
Yeah, globetard, you're a globetard. I'm just like, shut up. Like, you know, like somebody's going to see you for the first time and think that's all of us. They're going to think that we're all like that, and they don't see the humble people like that I see when I go to gatherings and we have people show up. Like, these people are just, and I've had people that have like, hey man, I've worked on this satellite technology. I've worked on this, and I've worked at NASA, but now I know the world's immovable. And you know, I've talked to these people that have these really cool testimonies, and they're humble people. They're not the ones that they put on the mainstream media, that go out there and just make us look like weirdos. And I mean, some of us are weird. I mean, but most people, you know, a lot of people are weird, but that doesn't.
Most scientists are weird
Yeah,
by
most scientists
definition.
are really weird.
All right, next question is from Winston's mom. Winston's mom asks, question for our guest Josh. He mentioned his 5 children. Are they also homeschooled? Would he like to see them go to college, perhaps?
My daughter is currently homeschooled because I guess I feel more protective over the daughter. But none of my sons are. My 12-year-old son, he was homeschooled for a little bit, but he prefers being in there with other students. He's actually gifted. He's like an answered prayer. I prayed that he would be gifted, smart, and humble at the same time, and he just turned out to be all of those. And but we have a wide range. I have a 24-year-old, 18-year-old, a 12-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 7-month-old. So quite the quite the range of ages. I'm a grandpa too.
That sounds absolutely terrible.
Yeah, it is. No.
Clip that, send it to your wife. Like, oh, you're in trouble now.
Yeah.
Uh,
No, it's a blessing.
Another question from Winston's mom. NASA has thousands of documents in warehouses just from the moon landing. Does Josh feel they are faked?
The moon landings, yeah. The moon landings, 100%. Like, I loved them growing up. It was a heartbreaker. I watched the Apollo 13 movie. I mean, my emotions were in it. I believed it 100%. But no, the moon landings were fake. They had so many people in on it, good people. And the thought that a lot of people think we have is that, oh, they're all a bunch of liars. When in reality, it's only like 3% of them that were in on it. Like, there's not a whole lot. Like 12. I mean, there was 12 people, 12 moonwalkers, right? 11 of them were in the same exact secret society. The 12th one that wasn't, his dad was. And so they're really good at keeping secrets. And if there's a worldwide organization keeping secrets, either A, they're planning some really good, glorious surprise party for all these decades, and it's about to get really good for us, or they're keeping secrets because they like to control, and they're doing things sinister behind the background so that they can keep this control. And what better way to control us than convincing us we don't matter and there's nothing else to see? Kind of like the Truman Show, planes could get struck by lightning. You don't want to go out there. It's really cold, lots of penguins, but we got to protect it. Studied the ice for decades. Nothing to see here. Move along, people. We love this ice. Don't worry about the rainforest. Ice is where it's happening. We're going to keep studying it for years and years and years to come. Don't question anything. Just let it be. So yeah, I don't trust it just because of the shadiness and, not just von Braun, who was a Nazi scientist, the founder of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory doing sex magic rituals, just lots of shady stuff. Like, this is not good people. Freemasons, Nazis, and occultists forming these organizations. Not to say that they couldn't just be smart people that just so happen to be weird freaks that are keeping secrets. They could be, but I don't. They lost all the tapes as well. So,
all right. Well, we have been going for about 2 hours. It was a great conversation. Really appreciate you coming on. Do you want to give any links or references where people can find out more about your work?
Yeah, I highly suggest Founded Earth Brothers on YouTube is where we put a lot of our stuff. We go live and do things, and our playlist, we have a Flat Earth Proof playlist, questions and answers. So you can go through and look, how does the sun set? Why does the sun set? How come you can't just zoom back in on it? Like, why are we the only flat planet? People ask all the common questions you get right away. Try to have answers to those. You can believe in the globe and still come to our channel, and I don't care. As long as you're kind and you're not just copy and pasting mean quotes to our subscribers, you're free to hang out. We have a Facebook page as well. And so come hang out with us. Send us emails if you want, Facebook messages. I've been blessed with over 100,000 subscribers. And this was another miracle that happened. I asked the Father, I said, you're showing me all this stuff. And I want you to send people this direction so that they can see it. The next day, I woke up from being this small little YouTube channel. And I started this new channel, Founded Earth Brothers, which was then Flat Earth Brothers, in response to getting in trouble at work for just mentioning the firmament in a YouTube video. So I started this channel as an act of defiance, like I'll show them, I'll start another channel. But when I asked them to send people this way, the next day I woke up, my email inbox was so full. I'm talking thousands and thousands of new subscriber. It was just mind-boggling that I could ask. It freaked me out. And since then, I mean, it's just continually grown. And then we had the shadow ban, and still grown. I mean, we went from, we finally passed 100,000. We don't qualify for the plaque though, because some of our content goes against what they wanted to say.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for coming on. Really appreciate it. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Yeah. You too, brother, man. It's good to talk to you.
Absolutely. Talk to you later.